Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you guys. Welcome to all of you joining the channel today for this live stream. Yes, wow, it is May 19th, 2026, and we are live. Good to see you folks. I am hoping that you guys had a great week. Yes, I was off for the week because I was a working man and they tired me out. So I had to take a whole week off. So it's good to see all of you guys here joining. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and do all the things. Like, for instance, you can go ahead and like the stream. And as well, if you're also watching on a clip rewatch, you guys can also hype. All you got to do is just if you're doing it on your mobile phone, once you see the chat, then you can just swipe to the left, and then it will give you the option to be able to hype as well. That also helps me to be able to grow the channel as well. So thank you so very much for that. If you guys have not already, you guys can subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. Gives you email notifications whenever I write any articles, go live like this, or upload any clips so you guys will be seeing in the next few days during the week. So also, if you guys have any questions for me, you want a video response, you guys can do that through QBounty at qbounty.com/Jaybefaunt. And also any videos that you guys want me to react to, you guys can do that there as well. So thank you so very much for that. All right, let's get to saying hello to everybody, because it's been, you guys haven't seen me in what? Gosh, almost 2 weeks, something close to that. Probably has been about 2 weeks. So yeah, it's good to see all of you guys back. Let me just jump in the chat here and say hello to everybody, and then we'll get into the stories for today. First off, we have Jess coming in and saying we're back. Yeah, we back. We all the way back. So good to see you in here. We have Nika Wicca coming in saying love on fire. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so very much to you. We have Edward coming in saying, what's up, JB? My energy level, because as soon as this tea gets into my system, oh, it's on. It's on. Tea, water, hydrate yourselves, folks. It is getting hot out there. So we're going to go to Bryce coming in saying, good afternoon, JB and comrades. Good to see you, Bryce. We have Miss DC Fairbank coming in saying, hey, everybody. Hey, Miss DC Fairbank. Nice to have you in the chat as well. Good to see you. Also, on the Rumble side, we have a non-user coming back. All right. Good to see you. It says radiating heart. It doesn't actually show the actual emoji for me, but I feel you. I feel you. I feel you. Miss Holly coming in saying, woohoo, Tuesday with JB. Good to see you, Holly. Good to have you in here. We have Terry coming in saying, greeting JB and comrades. Nice to have you in here, Terry. Nice to have you in here. Kamiko says, hi, everyone. Good to see you, Kamiko. Nice to have you back on this side of the week. We have Sean coming in saying, good afternoon, JB. Good to see you, Sean. I hope you're doing well. All right, we have more people coming in. We have Jace coming in saying, hello from Wisconsin. Hello from the Midwest. Hello from Wisconsin. I hope you got your cheese ready, because I'm ready. Oh, my goodness. Good to have you here. Roger Meadows is up in the chat saying, driving, well, you know what? Be safe, my brother. But at the same time, continue to be smooth. It's good to see you in here as well. I hope you got the bass on right now, because we're going to about to bump up in here. Okay. Let's get a little bit forward here. Let's see who else we got up in here. Yeah, so everybody's saying hello to everybody else. Good to see you all in here. All right, guys. For people who may not be aware, I did get a job. Because JB got bills to pay. And so because, let me put that down, because, you know, capitalism is going to capitalism, and, you know, I got to work in order to be able to afford an apartment and to be able to eat. So that's what has to happen. I would love to be able to do a channel full time, but we're just not at that level yet. And so we're still growing, we're moving. And so it's a slow growth, but as a slow growth is better, because then, you know, it doesn't mean that things go so fast and then they drop so quickly, right? And so that's one of the reasons why, I'm glad that we're still growing. I'm glad that we're still building community with each other so that we can be able to not only talk about these things, but also I can continue to encourage people to do more in the streets, especially when it comes to mutual aid and building dual power. I wasn't able to make the last mutual aid event that just passed. Shout out to Rio Orlando, for Rio here in Orlando, for having their solidarity hub. I missed it because I was scheduled to work. So I wasn't able to make it that day, but I will be trying to not only with the mutual aid chapter that I have here, but as well as do more mutual aid work with other different groups here in Orlando, because I want to make sure to continue that trend as well, because that is deeply important. But yes, so yeah, JB got a job, and it is, I'm on my feet all day, and it is physical work, and I have to do customer service. So guys, just if I seem exhausted, at times it is because I'm doing technically two jobs. I have my regular job, my 9 to 5, technically 9 to 5, but I also have this. And so this is also a lot of work too, because it involves editing, research, making my own thumbnails. I don't have any help. I'm a one-man operation. So this on top of, I'm still trying to get more guests for my other Kind Connections podcast channel, and trying to get guests for this channel as well. And so when it comes to correspondence with people, so thank you very much for everybody for being so patient with me, because it has been a time for the last few weeks. So thank you so very much for all of that. Roger said, heard you making $2,200 a week. Bruh, I wish if that was the case. Oh man, I'd be feeling a lot more secure right now, but it's just the way that Fig Newton crumbles, right? And it's just how the system it operates. And then we have Nihilo says, take care of yourself, JB. Good for you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And people have been so kind and helpful and supportive of me on this endeavor. So I'm happy about that. And yes, Nico Wicca, at least you got a job now. I am in a better position than many other Americans. Right now, the real economy is actually going down the tubes, because so many people are trying to find jobs and they just can't. And they're at a point now where they're at their wits' end. And I'm not just talking about people who are they just got a high school diploma. No, I'm talking about people with degrees. I'm talking people with bachelor's and master's degrees that are having hard times finding jobs right now, because of whether it be automation, whether it be because a lot of these companies are downsizing and operating on skeleton crews in order to make more profits. All these different things are happening. So it's part of the system that we live in. And this is why I keep on talking about dismantling the system, because as long as it continues, we're going to be in this state of duress in order to keep our heads above water, right? So, and then we'll do one more. We have a little one says, hey, JB, I'm glad I finally caught a live. You're great. I love listening to you. Oh, man, thank you so very much. That's very kind of you. Very kind. I thank you so very much. And then this one too. Sean says, does the job put a toll on the kidney? Thankfully, no. Part of it's also because I eat very healthy. And I'm trying to make sure that, I do everything possible to make sure this kidney stays healthy. I posted on here on my channel in the community section, as well as on social media, that things like my EGFR, which is basically about the glomerular filtration rate, which is basically the filters inside your kidney, and that my EGFR is now at normal kidney functioning levels, which is going to be a first for me since I was a toddler. And then on top of that, my creatinine levels are now at a level where it is considered normal kidney function, which is amazing because my creatinine levels have been super high ever since I was a teenager. So this is all, new for me, but I am grateful, and I know my limitations, and I know what I can and can't do, and I'm just trying to make sure that I stay within that zone. Now, we are going to move on to the stories that we're going to be doing today. It's a big news story today. A lot has happened over the weekend, including jumping into this week, and we have to get into it. Now, for this show today, what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be taking care of the heaviest stories first, because I don't want you to be carrying that heavy load on your minds and hearts when we depart. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm going to be doing the heavy stories first. And so let's go over to the thumbnail, take a look at what we're going to be discussing today, and then we'll get into the stories for today, because a lot has happened. So let's take a look here. So first off, so later in the show, we're going to be talking about friend to the channel, Briahna Joy Gray. Briahna Joy Gray has came under fire for things that she said on her podcast, Bad Faith Podcast, with journalist Sanad Saeed. And I feel like this is an overreaction, and I feel like people are being disingenuous in their critiques of what Briahna Joy Gray said, and they are straw manning her. And I'm going to give you guys examples why. We're just going to go through it and comb through it together. So we're going to be getting into that. Because is she under fire justifiably? I say no, but we're going to be getting into that. But also before that, we'll be discussing define family. We're going to be talking about Black Americans and how we define family culturally and how that impacts us in a economic way. And so a lot of times people talk about either the social implications of being Black in America, or people want to stick strictly to class without taking into context the social implications of, living in America. But we're going to actually put those together and show how class and identity also go hand in hand, how they intersect. So we'll be talking about that. And that is done by an article from Pew Research. But first, we're going to be talking about this very heavy story. This is something that happened yesterday. And guys, if you are easily triggered by these events, if you guys want to click away, or if you guys want to just skip this segment, I completely understand. But we'll be talking about a shooting that happened in a mosque in San Diego, California yesterday. So we're going to be getting into that story first. So we're going to be jumping into this right now. Muslims attacked. This story is basically going to be a trigger warning for many of you. Some of you may need to click away or not watch this particular segment. I completely understand. And look, no harm, no foul, but this story has to be told. And I want to make sure I tell it from a left perspective, an anti-imperialist perspective, and a humanitarian perspective, because unfortunately for us, we live in the imperial core, as well as the corporate media, which is really owned by the corporations who have control over our lives, are going to steer things in a way that's more favorable to them. So 2 teens have committed mass shooting in a mosque in San Diego yesterday morning. They murdered 3 adults, and they took their own lives afterwards. So this event is a clear display of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. I say the words anti-Semitism in its actual definition, its true meaning, because Arabs are Semites, right? Not saying that everybody in this mosque was Arab, by no means, because ethnicity and race and religion are different things. But a lot of people who are typically at mosques tend to be West Asian, North African, and either of African descent or Black American, what have you. as we're going to be seeing a little bit later as I'm discussing the story. And we're talking about this because there's a prejudice and a harm that is being done against them, which is clear anti-Semitism, clear Islamophobia, and clear white supremacy. And I'm going to preface this now. Just because somebody may be black or brown who commits crimes against a group that is marginalized, they also could be agents of white supremacy while not being white. I'm going to put that out there now. Just because the suspects are not white doesn't mean they still don't carry out white supremacy. Hello, Barack Obama. And so this tragedy is still under investigation from the local authorities as well as the FBI. So I want to look at exactly what happened. And then we'll be looking at the motivations of these teens. And so we're going to be getting into this right now. This was a very difficult story to get into. So guys, bear with me. I'm going to try to keep it together for this one because this story has been on my mind all night long. So shout out to Ryan Rosbiani. He's been all over the story on social media, and I'll also be going into corporate media to examine what they say. But he says, active shooter at the Islamic Center of San Diego, at least 2 dead, now we know it's 3, in shooting attack on a San Diego mosque. This sounds like a hate crime. Others were injured when a gunman opened fire at the Islamic Center of San Diego in Claremont, located at 7050 Ekstrom Avenue, around 11:40 a.m. local time. The center also houses a school. Live footage showing children being evacuated across the street as officers barricaded behind patrol cars with weapons drawn. The I-805 is shut down in both directions at Balboa Avenue. Mayor Todd Gloria confirmed emergency personnel on scene. The suspect's status has not been officially confirmed. Well, now we know it's 2 suspects at the same time. So let's get into this now, guys, so you guys can actually see what has taken place, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
We're taking a live look right now at the scene where police cars and fire cars have swarmed the area. This is right off of the 805 at Balboa Avenue. If you know the area, you have seen that white building there. In addition to being a religious institution, it is also a school. San Diego police say there is an active shooter right now in that area. We have seen over the last few minutes footage of people being evacuated from the building. You see what looks like some of the school children crossing the street right now away to safety. We're trying to get as much information as we can from police and from the community at this hour as they work on this scene. The last we have heard from them is that it is still an active scene. The first call came in at about 11:40 this morning. So this has been going on for nearly 40 minutes. And there you see some police officers looking like they are barricaded behind a patrol car. It looks like one officer has a weapon drawn, or maybe more than one officer has a weapon drawn pointing at that building. I've done some reporting from the Islamic Center before about the security measures that they have in place to prevent this exact type of thing from happening, or at the very least, if it does, to keep their people safe. And we saw a very large, very fast response from San Diego police. Those officers now moving away from the vehicle. This is the...
So first of all, a lot of people are probably going to be asking themselves this question. Well, why is this escalating against people who are Muslim? Why is this escalating against people at this Islamic Center? Here's the thing. When groups are scapegoated, some people believe the demagogues that scapegoat marginalized people. And so the marginalized people that are scapegoated for this end up being the first victims, the vulnerable. There was a school there, little children. And so who was being targeted? Was this during a service? I don't know if they have Monday services, but this is during school hours. So therefore, the goal was to go after the children. And being in these United States and how both parties, both political parties, not only co-signed but greenlit a genocide. You don't think that that type of mindset, that type of belief doesn't permeate throughout the rest of this country, and people start taking on those same prejudices that is influenced by us? Which group has a chokehold on the political power? Which foreign group has a chokehold on political power within this country? That so much so that they actually fund many of our politicians to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars. They funded Joe Biden's campaign. They funded Donald Trump's campaign. They funded Kamala Harris's campaign. They had influences over people like Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Mike Johnson. Go back. You can go back. And so it's no wonder why this type of thought permeates this country. And then the people who are the most susceptible to this type of thought process are people whose brains aren't even fully developed, or they're easily swayed by the opinions of demagogues. And so this is why this happens. And this is also the result of when you punch down instead of punching up. And this is something I think that a lot of people really need to start getting through their heads. Every single time you punch down at a marginalized group, remember it happened. The first group was Native Americans. The next group was Black Americans. Trust us, we know. Every single time you punch down at a marginalized group that is victimized by the perpetrators of this country, you are enabling a thought process that says it is okay to do these crimes, these inhumane, grotesque crimes against said group, because in your brain, oh, you're the one that's in the right, they're the ones in the wrong, and you have to do something about it. And so people take it upon themselves. And the craziest part is these people, they're like, oh my God, they're so evil. Is it because they're just evil, or have they been twisted to think that they're the ones that are righteous? They're the ones that their minds are twisted to think that they are the righteous ones. And then they commit atrocities like this. Every accusation is a confession. Every person that is bigoted towards Muslims, who says, oh, well, they want to do all these different horrible things. Really, to be honest with you, some of these people who many are Christian, that's what they want to do. They're just projecting it onto people who believe in Islam. Look, let's call a thing here. Let's be 100. Sometimes the prejudices that people have against others is really the calls coming from inside the house. And why am I so passionate about this? Not just because it's a human issue, but because you're talking to the son of a the grandson of a Black Muslim. Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's one of the things that a lot of people really don't understand. is that when you allow the prejudices against people and you allow this type of disinformation and misinformation to permeate your mind and heart, you start to think, well, we got to do something about this. And then they want to take matters into their own hands and commit crimes of these atrocities against an innocent group of people. Or they'll paint people with a broad brush and think, well, there's enough of them doing this, so we have to do something against all of them. And we see this permeate throughout the entire culture of America. I don't want to go into a huge tangent, but this is part of why these things happen. We're going to continue on, but I just wanted to cover that point.
Islamic Center of San Diego. We're trying to find out if anyone was hurt, if anyone has been shot, where the shooter might be in relation to this center, and what is going on now. There you see more officers standing by, creating what looks like a perimeter in the area and getting one more person out there from the front gate, trying to keep as many people safe as possible.
Okay, so with that, because I want to move on to the next part, right? So let's go into how CNN covers this, because you got to know what the corporations and their stenographers are really saying about this and how they word things and the narrative they go by. Because if you don't know, then how are you going to be able to combat the mis and disinformation that is being done by the people who really have our nation in a chokehold? So let's go into this. I'm not going to be able to watch this entire thing because it's 8 minutes and 40 seconds. And I know I'm going to be stopping like every 10 seconds just to debunk something or to commentate on something. So I'm not going to cover the entire thing. But of course, we're going to get into this right now. Here is Zionist sympathizer Jake Tapper that is going to be that's covering this story. So let's get into it.
We got some critical information from the San Diego police chief, specifically the timeline. What he said is just a little over 2 hours ago, authorities were called to the Islamic Center of San Diego due to reports of gunshots. He said they arrived within about 4 minutes, police did, and then found these 3 men victims in the parking lot of the mosque. He said authorities then went to try to enter the mosque, as they often do. They'll try to identify any potential shooter, but then police got calls of yet more shots fired at another area near the mosque. They then went to that location. They said they learned that there was a landscaper there who had been fired upon, but thankfully was not struck by bullets. But here, I have to admit, Jake, is the most strange, bizarre, however you want to describe it, part. Authorities say that they found 2 men ages 17 and 19 in a vehicle they believe to be the suspects. They believe they died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. That raises a lot of questions about, A, who those people are, but obviously what potential motivation there was here. We have had this question over the last couple hours whether the shooter or shooters, plural, may have been associated with this mosque or whether this was complete, targeted violence from the outside.
Okay, so first of all, let's get into this. Here's one of the biggest issues. Remember what I said about impressing upon minds and a demagogue really shaping the thought processes of people based on prejudices. We have a 17 and a 19-year-old. The human brain is not fully developed until between the ages of 23 and 24, right? That being said, you have people who are not in their right mind committing acts against a group of people based on misinformation, disinformation, as well as prejudice and bigotry because they've been listening to these people. Now, allegedly, these 2 also were Twitter followers of Laura Loomer. Let that sit with you. So here's the thing. The problem is that a lot of times when bad things like this happens, people want to raise their hands and back away and say, I'm not culpable. I didn't force them to do this. But here's the thing. Your words, your actions have influence on people around you, whether you like it or not. What you do influences the actions of other people, whether positive or negative. I'll give you an example. I forget the type of effect that it's called, but it's usually when you're in an area, and this is just an example, and you have somebody that is unhoused, that's begging for money. If you're sitting there and you know you have $1, $2 in your pocket that you could give to that person, that you do have available to give away, and you see them asking everybody within the general area for money, and nobody says yes. Just that one person gets up and goes, hey, here you go. Guess what? Other people started going in their heads, well, I guess it's okay. I guess it's all right. Well, I don't want to look like I'm stingy. I don't want to look like I'm holding back, out of. And people's consciousness start firing off. And then another person gives a little. Another person gives a little. Another person gives a little. That's almost like a peer pressure in a positive direction. This also happens in a negative direction. And so when you see, for instance, a president that either greenlights a genocide or another president that launches a war against the people who have largely a specific religious belief within the country, not everybody in that country has that same religious belief, but a huge majority do. And then that president's actually carrying out military strikes against them. And then you have other cohorts speaking down upon people who believe in said religion and basically saying things like, oh, it's not compatible with America, like somebody like a Megyn Kelly would say. Then, of course, people are going to go, well, you know what? I got to take matters into my own hands. And then they carry these things out. Because in their mind, it's like, okay, well, you guys are just talking about it. I'm going to be about it. I'm going to do it. And so this is why we as adults, especially, our words and actions do hold weight, not just in what we do, but the influences that we have in other people when it comes to people needing help, or when it comes to treating people in a kind and compassionate way. And the problem is that sometimes it is hard to be the first. It is nerve-wracking to be the first. But sometimes people, when it comes to positive things, they don't really want to be the first. They want to follow. At the same time, in a negative sense, the people who attack other people are going to follow because they're going to think, well, we got to do it. And then some want to one up because they think that it's going to be more righteous than the other person, when in reality, it's depraved.
Did appear to get some indication of an answer to that from the police chief, because he said that they have now brought in the FBI, the San Diego field office. He said they are treating this as a hate crime until they've determined that it's not. And of course, what that signals to us is that that would not appear to be someone who was a member of the Islamic Center there if they're describing this as a hate crime. But again, a lot of questions here. We've covered, you and I, so many acts of mass violence in this country, so many shootings. Rarely do you ever see two people engaged in the same type of targeted act of violence in a shooting. But here, authorities say they believe that these are two teens are indeed the suspects. A lot of questions about who they are, what the motivation was, and obviously why they decided to take their own lives outside this houses of worship. A lot of we often say that there are a lot of questions, more questions than answers. This is truly one of those very peculiar situations that authorities are trying to get to the bottom of, Jake.
Steve Moore.
So here's the thing. Here's something I really want to jump on. Because a lot of people are like, well, what was the motivations, right? And they're saying they're going to rule it as a hate crime. Here's my issue with that. if it's politically motivated, it turns from being a hate crime to being terrorism. This was a terrorist act. This was a homegrown act of terror against a group of people simply based on the way they worship God. That's basically it. That's what this was. It was an act of terror. Somebody in my mentions came in and tried to do a whataboutism, right? Because I said it was terrorism. And they said, well, was it terrorism when that guy who was Muslim came in to that club in Orlando and shot up 50 people? First of all, it was 49. He was the 50th murder. But you don't count that because he was the assailant. It was 49 people, first of all. By the way, when it happened, I only lived 8 minutes away from there at the time. So, yeah, I'm a little bit closer than you. Anyways, yes, that was a hate crime because it was based on the person actually being LGBTQ, but they were hating of themselves and they carried out that horrific act against people who were LGBTQ. Right? And so, was that a hate crime or terrorist act? It was a hate crime. It was hatred based on also who they were. It wasn't really a message. There was no manifesto found or letters that were written to basically express that, you know, they want everybody in that particular group to pass away. Omar Mateen was pretty much just the worst closet case I've ever seen. But it was a hate crime, not terrorism. Now, what these young men did, to me, that was terrorism. So let's take a look at this, because I think this is also really important. So this is about 21 hours ago. It says sources ID suspects in mosque shooting. It says 2 senior law enforcement officials briefed on the investigation, and federal law enforcement official identified Kane Clark, who's 17, and Caleb Vasquez, 18, as the suspects in today's shooting at the Islamic Center of San Diego. Previously, law enforcement officials said the suspects died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds. At a briefing this afternoon, police said the suspects were 17 and 19. At a news conference this evening, the chief said that the suspects were 17 and 18. No motive has been provided. Investigators are examining possible anti-Islamic writings found in the car where police found the dead suspects, 2 senior law enforcement officials said. So here's right there terrorism. It wasn't just a hate crime, it was terrorism. But either way, what led to this? What type of culture do we have that leads to this? The culture that's perpetuated by people who constantly punch down, constantly are punching at people who are marginalized, constantly punching at people who are different, even though they do not cause harm to other people. You know, it's painting people with a broad brush, saying, "Oh my God, they're going to harm people," and then you paint them with a broad brush, and then somebody carries out the most horrific act that they can think of against people who don't have power. And these people are frustrated with the system, but it's the same system that's perpetuated by the very people that they're getting their marching orders from. And that's one of my biggest issues. Let's go here. I want to share this as well. We need to get one of the stories from one of the victims. And I want to get the story from one of the victims for you guys, because I think this is also important. Victim testimony, to me, carries more weight than, the authorities. It just does. And this person, what better person to recount what happened than somebody that is very young. So let's get into it.
I heard like a bunch of bad stuff, like gunshots. Now I went inside the closet with my whole class. We heard like 12 or like 16 gunshots. And then the SWAT team said, if you open up, and they opened the door. They told us to put our hands up and form a big line. We were like walking inside the musalla. All of us, we saw the Sheikh's apartment inside the mosque. And like it was broken down. The gold stuff is broken on the floor. And then we went down. We went from the Hudud station. And then we saw a bunch of bad stuff, people laying down, and bad stuff. I felt a bit scared. My legs were shaking in my hands. And my head was like hurting me a lot. I felt like a rock.
Imagine the amount of trauma that is affecting these little ones. Imagine that. I also want to share this as well, because when people talk about the assailants, everybody wants to blame mental health. But let's hear what this person has to say.
This should not be happening in schools, in places of worship. Parents leave their kids. I mean, we're all devastated. We're all devastated. And this will not be another case of mental illness, because these two shooters that are known to be 17 and 19 have someone bigger behind them. And we are not going to take this as a mental illness, with all due respect. Every time something happens to the Muslim community, happens to be by someone who is mentally ill, we are done. When it's something that, I'm sorry, this is totally devastating. You should have seen the parents. You should have seen the staff, the entire community that supports our Muslim community is devastated, because they know that we are peaceful people.
So let me reflect on what was just said here. Okay. So the people who always want to point and say this is mental illness, why are we throwing people who have mental illness under the bus for what two people have done? Why are we throwing people who suffer from depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder? Why are we throwing them under the bus, who most people who have some type of special needs or mental illness are actually usually the victims of crime instead of the perpetrators? Let me ask you something here. all the people that have, okay, perfect example. The soldiers that have tortured prisoners in Abu Ghraib during the Iraq War, were they mentally ill? All those soldiers that have committed absolute atrocities, are we going to say and blame that on mental illness? What about those Zionists that sexually assaulted Palestinians? What about that? Are they just mentally ill? Are we just going to say, oh my God, it's mental illness whenever it happens to a group of people that you personally don't really have a liking towards? Oh, well, it's just mental illness. Was it a mental illness when those black people were killed in the church in South Carolina? In the 60s, where 4 little black girls and the church was bombed, was that just mental illness? Was it mental illness that killed Martin Luther King Jr.? Was it mental illness? Was it mental illness when the Twin Towers fell on 9/11? Were they just mentally ill? When Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols bombed the Oklahoma City federal building, was that just mental illness? You see where I'm going here? Why are we throwing people who have a disability under the bus in order to soften the blow of the culpability of people who constantly punch down? Why are we doing that? No. What we're not going to do here is we're not going to excuse or absolve the complicity of people who consistently punch down at others. And this goes across political parties because both parties do it. She's right. We're not going to sit here and go, oh my God, mental. No. We're not going to throw disabled people under the bus. Nope. No, we're not going to do that. There's something else that happened that I was just like, what? What in the heck are they saying? What are they doing? Let me share this, because when I saw this, I said, no, wait, why are we centering them? Take a look at this tweet. This is from Stella Escobedo. It says, developing, shooting as the Islamic Center in San Diego. All Jewish institutions are on lockdown, including schools. Wait, what? Let's take a listen.
Is in conversation with police. There looks to be a bit of an issue here where people want to get closer because of some concerns. I heard her say my daughter is in there. So a lot of emotion out here. And it's just a very scary situation. I can't.
But here, look in the caption, right? It says several Jewish schools in San Diego on lockdown. My question is, this happened at Islamic Center. This happened at a mosque. So why are Jewish schools on lockdown? Now, some people may say, well, somebody may want to retaliate. But here's the thing, right? How often are crimes against Jewish people in this country done by Muslims? Now, if you want to say white supremacists, oh, well, we can go there. But I really don't hear about people who believe in Islam committing crimes against Jewish people. I really don't hear it that much, or ever. So why in the world would they be on? In fact, why, if that's the case, if you want to put them on lockdown, okay, but why aren't all schools on lockdown? Shouldn't all public schools and private schools be on lockdown? Because what if they're just after children in general? Why just one specific kind? Why just one specific group? I'm sure there's a school full of black kids that should also be on lockdown because they could be vulnerable too. What about the Latino kids in a public school? What about them? And it continues. Like, this, why are we centering them when it was Muslims that were when it was Muslims that were actually the ones attacked? Let me share this as well. This is from Mahmoud Al-Qudsi. Says this cannot be real. Deranged madman shoots up mosque, and the BBC is focused on a nearby Hebrew school instead. Says police say threatened neutralized after reports of active shooter at San Diego Mosque, right? And it says text from grandchild, I think we're safe. Witnesses are continuing to describe their experiences to CBS, the BBC's US partner. One woman speaking to CBS says her grandchildren were in the nearby Hebrew school, which also went into lockdown when the shooting happened. The children are 11 and 13, says the woman. The Hebrew school is located across the street from the Islamic Center of San Diego. Her granddaughter has been able to text her, sending a message from lockdown saying, I think we're safe. Now, if this is just about proximity, then okay, I completely understand, because, you know, you want to talk about proximity, stray bullets, you know, potentially assailants going to other places, maybe trying to hide or maybe trying to attack more people. I get that. But all of these schools, the Jewish schools being on lockdown within the area, why just them? Why not every single school, period? If there's a college that's local, that should be locked down. You know what I mean? This is why people are outraged. If you said all other schools are on lockdown, okay, fine, no story there. But why just specifically Jewish schools? If we're going to lock down schools, we should do it all, because don't we care about every single child? We should care about every single one. I'm not saying don't lock them down. I say lock them all down for the safety and protection of the children, as well as the staff and faculty that are in those schools. I wonder what you guys think about that. It's kind of weird, right? So I want to get into this as well, because there was a press conference. There was a press conference done where there was some words said to the mayor. And I want to cover the press conference a little bit first, and then we'll get into what some of the residents said to the mayor. So we're going to be getting into that in a second.
There is no further threat. Both suspects in this case are deceased. All of the kids are safe. Our hearts go out to the families that are in this moment being notified of what has happened to their loved ones. We have 3 confirmed adults that are deceased at the Islamic Center. Because of the Islamic Center location. We are considering this a hate crime until it's not. And at this point, we're going to work closely with the FBI to make sure that we are matching all the resources that we need for this investigation. Mark, there is no.
So I want to share this as well, because this is also really important. And just like I said, Ryan Rosbiani has been on this. This part right here, I think, is the most pathetic that corporate media has. And people go, oh, well, why in the world would they do something? This is what I meant by punching down. Let's get into this, because this absolutely does not add to the conversation. It just perpetuates Islamophobia and prejudice against Muslims. So let's get into this.
I'm trying to get some information about it. According to what I
This is Fox News, by the way.
see here, it is a Sunni mosque location. Why do I bring that up? Because Iran is a Shia nation. And some of the stuff that we've seen lately relative to Iran, like, for instance, Hezbollah-linked attacks that were planned to go off here in America, that has a Shia footprint. And if you
Wait, what does Iran have to do with this? Why are we blaming Iran for a shooting against Muslims? This is this crazy, deranged type of mentality from the corporate media to feed into people to think, oh my God, well, these people are just so violent that they even go up against each other, when in reality, that's absolute hogwash. Because number one, Iran's trying to protect their homeland. They ain't coming over here. There is no evidence of them doing anything here. In fact, before she basically kissed the boot, Tulsi Gabbard confessed, the director of national intelligence. She said that Iran was no threat. No threat to the United States, no immediate threat. And so the people who were in the intelligence community said that Iran was no immediate threat. So why would he be saying something like that? This is brainwashing in order to perpetuate another event like this happening at another mosque. That's basically what it is. Here you have a perfect example of a stenographer for the state that is trying to punch down in order to get people to have the same mindset as those two teenagers had. Because they need stuff like this to happen in order to keep this chaos going. The lies that they will tell in order to keep chaos going. Iran has nothing to do with this. And this is just continuing. And this is also trying to make an excuse of why the United States should go to war with Iran. No, absolutely not. There is no integrity, no journalistic integrity from any of these people in any of these corporate media outlets. And this is why you should support independent media, because they're the ones we are the ones that try to tell the truth, full stop. These guys at these corporate media, they are just bloodthirsty, warmongering war hawks. That's basically what they are. And that's something that it bothers me to no end. And so shout out to Ryan Rosbiani for that one as well. So one of the things that I also want to share was what the citizens of San Diego had to say to the mayor. And they let him have it, because this is also on him. And I want to get into this here. So let's get into what the mayor had just said. Now, the mayor had just finished his remarks. I'm going to try to see if I can enlarge this just a little bit so people can see a little bit better. It says San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria, who has spent the last years dehumanizing Palestinians and spewing Israeli propaganda, gets called out by a resident in the wake of the terrorist attack at the Islamic Center in San Diego. And yes, it's a terrorist attack. Let's get into it.
A direct result of your leadership. Your leadership. Our Muslim brothers and sisters have been talking to you for how long? You have to fucking listen to them, Todd. Just like you did with ICE. It was golden ICE, golden science propaganda, and you'll keep doing it as long as it lines your fucking pockets, won't it? Show something. Worse approval rating than a fascist dictator with shit in his pants.
Today, our city was shaken.
Yes, he should hang his head in shame, because this is what I was talking about. People who constantly punch down that create conditions like this to happen. And it resulted in the murder of 3 people simply for being Muslim. Now, I don't know for a fact if the security guard was Black American. I feel like he is. I could be wrong, but I think the security guard was Black American. Let's get into this, because I really want to get into this right here. Shout out to Junior. He says his name is Amin. He did security for mosques in America. He was a Christian and accepted Islam. He was martyred today at San Diego Mosque. This video is now his legacy. Repost this. So I can't watch this entire thing. It's, almost 20 minutes long, but I just want to get into what he says. So let's go. Music I can't really share because copyright, but I want to make sure that I show some of this so that we can see what he says.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم. My name is Brother Amin. I am a revert to Islam. I was born and raised as a Christian throughout my childhood, and I really didn't understand the concept of the Trinity, but I hid that within my heart. But I was afraid if I asked the pastors or whatever, they would say, "How you dare you question this and that?" So I hid it. And Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is the one who knows the hearts. So he knew I had that secret all those years. And so after graduating in 1992, I got my first job. I met a Muslim guy who was new to Islam. But again, he was just learning about Islam. So he wasn't completely all authentic as far as what Islam entails. But nevertheless, we became friends. And he started talking about Islam. So the concept of Islam believing that there's only one God, one being responsible for everything, I was like, wow, this means so much. I don't have to hide anymore. It makes so much sense. A person only has one boss, one CEO, so on and so forth. So the human beings only have one creator. And that is what, I was happy, intrigued me to learn more about Islam. As far as the reaction of my family when I took the Shahada, became a Muslim. Well, I really, at that point in my life, I really wasn't hanging out as much. Again, graduated from high school, so, but I was kind of lazy, so to speak. You know, this and that. My mom was on my case, and rightfully so. So after I took the Shahada, became a Muslim, my mother saw a change in me. Okay, I'm starting to help her around the house, being more respectful, so on and so forth. I got a job. I bought a TV for her, so our relationship, improved. So that was a good thing. However, being a new Muslim, not knowing how to be able to portray Islam without disrespecting or offending my non-Muslim family members, we had a little bit of clash here and there, but nevertheless, we worked through it. So bottom line is, half of my family is now Muslim, half are not, and that's their choice. We still respect each other, so on and so forth. As far as my mother, again, we got closer, and one night she had a dream, and I told her, I said, Mom, you should come to Islam. This dream, what it's showing is a warning from Allah, your creator, that He should be worshipped. You should come to Islam. And again, I wasn't forced, just a suggestion. And she said, you know what, I'm ready to take Shahada. So I gave her Shahada at that moment. And since she's been Muslim until now, she's been praying her 5 times Salat on time. She gives dawah. So alhamdulillah, Allah guides whom He wills.
So I want to share this as well. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because we need to humanize the victims. We don't humanize the victims enough. We'll talk about the statistics about victims, but we need to talk about humanize them. This is from Suppressed News. Says Amin Abdullah was a father of 8. He was one of the 3 innocent victims killed today by 2 terrorists in the San Diego Islamic Center. Everyone who knew him said that no matter what, he would always greet them with a smile. This was a result of anti-Muslim sentiment rising. So here is them talking about him as well.
One of the best things about this man was did not matter what day it was. I mean, this guy would deal with headaches, like traffic, cars going fast, and he would make sure to smile and always give you that sense of patience. And even if your day was rattled, he would make you happy. He was just that type of person. I'm not speaking in exaggeration. I mean, I'm a grown man. It's hard for me to shed tears. But the first thing I went to call when I heard the news was to call him. And that's how much security I had in that man. I mean, my cousin
did they tell you he's the one?
Yes.
There's other 2 casualties as well.
And who are they, staffers?
One of them was...
One we've known since we were little kids. He takes care of the little grocery shop inside the Islamic Mosque. And another is the husband of one of the teachers, the faculty that actually we just left her. They walked in to tell her that they killed her son. And we cannot let this go lightly. This is all because of hatred.
So with that being said, for the people that have been martyred in this, I want to share this before we finish this segment, but there is crowdfunding for the family of Amin Abdullah. And so far, I think they reached their goal of $2 million to support the family of Amin Abdullah, Islamic Center of San Diego martyr. Now, this is the actual site. Is organized by CARE San Diego with the Islamic Center of San Diego. So they're raising it for the family. And this is Amin Abdullah. And so it says on Monday morning, 2 gunmen opened fire outside the Islamic Center of San Diego, the largest mosque in San Diego County, attached to a school where dozens of children were in class. Amin Abdullah was the security guard on duty. He didn't run, he stood his ground. Hours later, the San Diego police chief stood at the press conference and said Amin, quote, played a pivotal role in keeping this from being much worse, end quote. In plain words, Amin put himself between the gunman and everyone inside. Teachers, staff, and more than a dozen children were walked safely out of the building by police this afternoon, hand in hand. They were alive because Amin did his job. He paid for that with his life. Those of you who knew him remember a man who greeted every person who walked through the masjid doors with a smile. Every time you came, he greeted you and welcomed you. One community member told reporters, very energetic, very strong, very professional. You could tell he was willing to do his job greatly. He wasn't just a guard. He was the first face of that community to anyone who came through the door, in the last line of defense when it mattered most. So that's him. He was a father of 8, by the way. Says the funeral and the months of bills that follow are now for his family to face alone. This fund is for them. Every dollar raised will go directly to Amin's family to cover funeral and burial costs, immediate household needs for rent, groceries, utilities, now that they have lost their primary earner, his children's education and continuity of schooling, long-term financial stability in his spouse and children, trauma counseling for the family he leaves behind. You do not have to share in Amin's faith to stand with his family. You only have to believe that a man who died shielding children would be proud to know that his own children will be cared for. Give what you can. Share this with 5 people who can give more. Help us tell Amin's family that he is not forgotten and neither are they. And they say, to God we belong and to God we return. Now they give a disclaimer, says, while there were other victims of this tragedy from the community, we are waiting on their families before disclosing the names and details. Any proceeds raised from this campaign will be given to Amin Abdullah's family and other victims' families as well, under the supervision of the Islamic Center of San Diego. So for you guys, I'm going to be sharing this link in the chat if in case you guys want to give. I know that they just met their goal, but if they can far exceed their goal, then that would be great. If you guys can help out there at all. I know that, you know, a lot of us are strapped, but seeing as how what they just went through and the traumatic event of him, you know, guarding the people with his life and paying for that with his own life, you know. If I was the father of any one of those children that were saved by him, how would you feel? If that was your son, daughter, kid, niece, nephew, if that was, you know, any of the people who worked inside, that was your spouse, your sibling, your parent. It's people like that, right? And so while a lot of these agents of the state punch down, those of us who are part of the proletariat, those of us who are part of the working masses of the people, we want to lift up the people that are the most marginalized, the people that are victims of the marginalization, lift them up as much as we possibly can. I know this story was heavy, but we also have to celebrate the heroes. The hero being Amin Abdullah, who stood in between danger to make sure that people were safe. His life, he paid the highest price. And we should be grateful for people like him. And I am grateful for the safety of all the children and all the people who have survived at the Islamic Center of San Diego. My heart is with you. And please continue to be bold in your faith and continue to spread compassion and love wherever you go. And we see you. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. Thank you so very much, everybody. I wanted to go over all that because I wanted to make sure that we were as thorough as possible for this. But yeah, heavy story, man, heavy story. So we're going to go and check the kick chat really quick, and then we will get into Rumble. Okay, we're good on Kick. Let's check the Rumble chat, see if we have any Rumble rants. If we do, then great. If not, we'll just cover the Rumble on the regular chat. Let me see here. Okay, I'll cover that with the general chat. All right. Okay. Let's go into the regular chat here. Let me see. All right, guys. Let me see. Nihilo says mental health loses meaning when we use it as an excuse. Yeah, yeah. Rondo says bigotry is a mental illness. I say it's a mental condition, but not an illness, because then that means that that person was well, and now it's something that they can't control. That's why I don't say mental illness, because if people can work through it and get rid of the bigotry, then was it really an illness, or was it a condition that they surrendered to, or that they continue to allow to come to its devastating conclusion? You know, I mean, it's a conversation to have. It's not something that, I'm arguing over, by no means. But I feel like the use of mental illness is just, it can throw people who are legitimately have mental illness under the bus. Let's continue on. Nico Wicca says greed is one hell of a drug when it makes people do things at any cost for achieving their goals. Yeah, Kamiko says nope, just horrible people. Yeah, absolutely. Jacqueline says greed. Mikhail, sometimes mental illness is just a convenient excuse. Rondo says mental illness doesn't presuppose antisocial behavior, though. John Kemper says the world is mental. The system is designed that way. Yeah, definitely. Chris says, I don't think the Cali Mosque victims are scapegoating the mentally ill. She is mad that attack. Oh, sorry, that's not what I meant. What I'm saying that is that a lot of the people who perpetuate the bigotry, when things like this happen, then they will say, oh, that person was just mentally ill, when in reality, they were listening to that very person who's now claiming that the person who did it was mentally ill. I'm sorry if I didn't clarify clearly. So she's mad that attackers will get the slap on the wrist and their murder excused as a mental illness. Yeah, I was basically trying to say the same thing. If I said it differently, if I didn't make it clear, my apologies, Chris. But yeah, that's basically what I was trying to say, but you said it a lot better than I did. Rondo says these efforts will always want to center themselves. I see where Drake gets it from. Damn, Rondo. Wow. Well, I mean, points were made. Accord Lord, good to see you, Accord Lord, in the chat. Let me see. And wasn't it crazy how they just decided to lock down one particular type of school, but not all the schools? That was crazy to me, right? Accord Laura says it's Fox News. They think Iran makes the sun go away. Oh my God. Yeah. Rondo says Shias would not attack on a masjid. This report is nonsense meant to inflame. Yeah. Good to see you. All one same. Nice to have you in the chat. David says it is also what they accuse us of when we criticize Israel's war crimes. They are pushing the conflation between religion, ideology, and a state to push their agenda. That's also very true, David. They count on that to make it seem like we're, against people of a particular religion and ethnicity. But no, it's against an ideology that is perpetuated by a subset of people who are pushing for settler colonialism. Just like you have certain Christians who push this type of oppressive nature. Like, for instance, if I, as a black man, put the history of my people in this country, you could say that my prejudice against Christians would be justified because there was slaveholders that used Christianity to continue to enslave my ancestors. And yet I don't paint Christians with a broad brush. And the same is true of many other different groups. You have some people who will claim to have a specific belief system and they will do heinous things, but is that true of everybody of that particular belief system? And by belief system, I mean religion, right? No. But some people will want that so that it gives them an excuse to commit heinous crimes against another group. Let's go into, good to see Ellen as well. Appreciate it. Let me see. All right. Good to see a Truth Sensei in the chat as well. Let me make sure, because I have to get going soon. Kamiko says, thank you, JB, for lifting Amin up. Thank you very much. I think that was important. Ellen, good to see you. Edward says, my heart goes out to his family. He was courageous, thinking more about the safety of the kids than his own life. Absolutely. Roger says, be easy. That dude did a story where some Friedman brothers disarmed an active shooter barehanded. You know what? That's a cold move. That is a cold move. You got to be a stone cold brother in order to be able to do that. Yeah, be able to do that. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that, Roger. Appreciate it. We have CBC voter in the chat saying, "Hey JB, good to see you, CBC voter." There was one in. there was another one in I wouldn't want to miss it. There was a comment left in Rumble that I didn't want to. Oh, here it is. Thank you to all the non-users saying punching down is a big problem, even with leftists. Unfortunately, some do punch down. This is what I'm talking about. And some will think, oh, all we have to do is just talk about this one sector of the human experience within this country and under this capitalist system, but they don't want to talk about the other intersections. And then some of them will also participate in punching down. And then when somebody goes, hey, you're punching down, then it's don't home police me. Yeah, so unfortunately that happens. You gotta be careful of that. We're truly about being with the people, then we have to be with the people. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, so let's go into the next the next segment. But before we do that, we're going to go into and thank the patrons on Patreon, because that's what we do. We are very appreciative of all the people who are on Patreon and who continuously make sure that this channel is able to do the damn thing and able to push forward and keep the lights on. So here are the tiers. We have Mega Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Jaybefaunters. And we have Comrades, Solidarity, and JB members. And thank you so very much, and welcome to new members. Edward Cortez, Mary Ploppins, and Council Estate Media. Thank you so very much. You guys literally keep the lights on around here. Thank you for all that. And I really need to reformat and completely remake this list because my joint looks busted. I just do not have the time or the technical know-how to do this. But I appreciate you guys. If you guys would like to donate as well, you guys can do that through super chats. You guys can do that through memberships, or if you guys would like to, you guys can also donate via Venmo as well. It's deeply appreciated. So that heavy story is done. And thank you very much. And also, by the way, the link to the crowdfunding for Amin Abdullah is also linked down in the description below, just in case anybody wants to see it again. So it's down in the description. Let's go into the next one. So, of course, we talked about the shooting at the mosque. Now we're going to be talking about Black Americans and about defining family. I think this is going to be very important that we're going to be getting into. So let's jump into this now. Talking about the Pew Research Seminar examines how Black Americans define family. There was a song back in the day by the late, great Gerald Levert that was called Family Reunion. And as far as, you know, being Black in America and the Black experience, I wonder how many of you have went through this. How many cousins do you have that aren't blood related to you? How many aunts? How many aunties you got? Some who aren't blood related. How many uncles do you have? Sometimes, look, the Black experience is so interesting that We will even call a man of a certain age uncle who we probably just met. And we use it in a short form as an term of endearment. Unc. Right? Sometimes we'll see a woman of a certain age. We'll be like, hey, auntie. Sometimes we'll see an older woman that's old enough to be our grandmother. Like, hey, mama, how you doing? Right? And so that's something that's reserved that we constantly hold within our community. And it's part of that Black experience that really stresses and builds this concept of family that I think is so indicative of how we are. Because if you go back in history, the trauma that we have suffered over the years, starting with being enslaved, then enduring Jim Crow, Black codes, redlining, mass incarceration, our families have been separated over and over and over and over. I mean, infants taken out of their mother's arms, children being ripped away from their parents. Married couples or couples who love each other have been stripped away from each other and sent to different plantations. Some, have, died in, apart. And so this separation of family caused Black people to hyper focus on keeping families together, even so much so that we started calling each other brother. And we started calling Black women sisters. And that's what we did. Because we saw each other as a part of one another. In fact, a lot of us who may have some of the same last names, well, if you trace our lineage, a lot of us will have ancestors that came from the same plantation. Y'all see my last name here. Y'all see it right there. There's a plantation with that last name. And most likely, anybody who has this last name is related to me. Number one, it's not very usual, especially. But most people, almost all people who have that last name that are Black, yeah, we're related. In some way, shape, or form. We're related. Because their family probably originated in that plantation in Essex County, Virginia. And so because of that separation, it causes us to want to come together. And it's really embedded through trauma as us wanting to hyper-focus on family. And it's even embedded within the epigenetics of our very beings. So it's not surprising to me when this research came out from Pew Research Center. But I think that it is important that, some people who may not know this dynamic about Black culture, let's explain it. And it also even gets into the economics of it. So I want to share this. So this is from the journal Blacks in Higher Education. It says, Pew Research Center examines how Black Americans define family. It says the Pew Research Center recently released findings of a survey revealing how Black Americans think about and support their families compared to other adults. Black Americans are more likely to say their family includes someone who is not a direct relative. Now, when I read this part, already two people came in mind. Two aunties. And I always thought that we were blood related when I was a little kid. Until I found out those are just my mom's close friends. There's no blood relation. And then one of them, her son, I used to call cousin. And that's how it is in the Black community. Sometimes, and here's the thing, right? Black people, y'all know, you got your blood cousins and you got your play cousins. Sometimes your play cousins are not biologically related to you, but you grew up together to the point where it feels like siblings or cousins. And that's how it is, right? And there's always, like, your mama got her best friend from high school, and that's your auntie. Or your daddy got his best friend from high school, and that's or uncle. And that's how it is. That's how it was growing up for me. So let's get into this even further. It says over 3/4 of Black Americans have at least one non-relative they consider family. Now, hang on. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the family code law that was actually passed in 2022 in Cuba. The family code law, one of the things that they actually changed in the law was the definition of family basically means who you consider to have these close familial ties with, even if it's not blood related. They passed that in Cuba. Overwhelmingly. Us Black Americans, we've been living this life ever since they stole us from West Africa and brought us over here. We've been living that life. That's how we are. Well, it goes to show they live that same life over there in Cuba. So that's what it reminds me of. And by the way, a lot of people don't realize this, but Cuba is full of Black people. So let's continue on. It says, and 55% have more than one non-relative in their families. In contrast, only 63% of other adults say they have at least one non-relative family member. So it's very indicative of Black culture. It says Black Americans are also more likely than other adults to feel close to extended family members, including grandparents, 48% versus 33%, cousins, 42% versus 20%, and or aunts or uncles, 36% versus 19%. Furthermore, Black Americans are significantly more likely to turn to these extended family members for emotional support. So, you know what? I should have bought in this particular video, but it basically was showing how. Let me see if I can find it. It was basically showing how in the Black community, you know, you got that uncle or that auntie that that constantly is bringing the kids over, or that you know what? Let me see if I can find it, because this is a really good video, because it really just shows how it really shows how Black people, how we are when it comes to the way we interact, especially within family dynamics. Let me see if I can find this. Let me see. I know exactly what it looks like. Let me see here, because that was a point that I found really heartening. Let me see. I hope I can find it, because it really is. Oh, I found it. All right, so let me share this with y'all, because Black people are gonna laugh, but this is really about it, right? And I love this lady; she's funny. But it says POV, y'all run away to your aunt's house. All right, let's go.
Y'all want to spend the night? What's going on? You ain't over there arguing with your mommy, is you? Don't get me wrapped up in nothing now. You know how your mom is. Come on in here, y'all. Come on. You ain't got no pajamas. It don't matter. You put on one of your uncle t-shirts anyway. Come on in here, baby. Hey, about to put something on the grill, and then it's gonna be. Here come the ice cream truck now. Listen, go up there and get them that loose money that ain't in that money clip over there on your uncle's side of the bed. Y'all go get y'all something off the ice cream truck. Hurry up now before you miss it.
Thank you.
Tell your brother come get his snack too.
Okay.
Now, don't put none of your juju on these cards. Go on and deal me something if you want me to play with you. How many books you got? Your sandbagging ass. You're more quit calling over here. Because if she that damn worried, she should have came over here and got you herself. Exactly. Calling my phone all that damn time. Put your stuff on so we can go play put-put. You can fit my shoes. We're going to put the Air Maxes on. You can have them.
wait. And it always be that auntie and uncle that got a little bit more money than your family. And they always, you know, when you come over, they always got something planned, or they always got a little extra to do something with. Always. Or you got like 3 or 4 other siblings, and then they only got one kid, that's your cousin, and they got a lot more money left over. So they just like, all right, I got you. That's how it is in black households. Anyway, let's continue.
Take care of them shoes now. John at the pizza place owe your uncle a favor. So what kind of pizza you want? Yeah, what kind do you want? That's okay. John. Hey. Oh, yeah, and then John, he down there at the pizza place. You know, once his daddy, he next in line to run everything. So you want me to put you on? Okay. Hey, this pizza in here ready, y'all. Come on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Him and your uncle had a business deal together, so he owe us a few favors. The pizza ready. I said, and don't come over here bothering these kids, because they came over here because you was probably getting on their damn nerves. Because I know you get on my nerves. Don't come over here and get them riled up. And Mom, your daughter had an attitude when she came over here to pick up my niece and nephew. So take me over here to pick up these kids, because I know I just told them they had to go home, but take me over here. Take me over here to get them, because I ain't playing with her at all. Come on, y'all. Get back in the car. Shut up. Go on, your ugly self. Come on, y'all. Let's go. You owe me. Stinking ass.
But yeah, that's how it is, right? Okay, so let's continue on in this article, because I want to really get to the economic aspects of this. But it says, although they're more likely to report financial strain, Black Americans are more likely than other Americans to personally give money to their family members. Nearly 6 in 10 Black Americans say they have financially supported a family member in the past year, with 51% of this group saying giving money hurt their own personal finances. In contrast, 42% of other adults have recently provided financial support to their family, with 35% saying those actions hurt their personal finances. So we literally give to our family till it hurts. Yeah, that's the Black family, right? Even if we don't have it, we still want to make sure that people aren't in that situation, because we know what it's like a lot of times. It says Black adults in the United States, 58%, say they generally consider other Black Americans to be their brothers and sisters. So if you want to learn when it comes to how we build community, look at the Black community. Now, we got a lot that we got to work on, right? Black Americans, we got a lot we have to work on when it comes to different things, of course. But at the same time, we can go back to our roots and set the standard once again, because that's how we grew up. In a Black community, let me tell you something. And for those of you who grew up in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. You got Miss Diane that lived 2 doors down, that whenever it's summertime and Mama got to go to work, Mama goes to Miss Diane and says, hey, can you watch my kids while I go to work? And Miss Diane Miss Diane, she's a little older. She's probably in her 60s. Her kids are grown and outside the house. She's like, all right, come on, bring them babies over. And Miss Diane is going to be, number one, a lot cheaper than these VPK or these daycares. Number two, Miss Diane is also going to be a lot more safer. And number three, Miss Diane don't play. Miss Diane, make sure you get a healthy meal. Miss Diane, make sure that, you know, you don't mess up you know, in her house. Number three, Miss Diane can also make sure you get a nap. Don't think she won't. She'll make sure you get a nap. Right? And so it's that, and then the people across the street, and then, you know, this person a few doors down. You always got that old man, that old black man that live over there, you know, and, you know, every single time you try to get into some trouble, you know, he got his eyes on you, and next thing you know, you straighten up. That's black community. And so the thing is, like, I think we can get back to that. Is just we have to start getting to know our community members once again. But so yes, this is also an aspect about it. It says nearly 80% say they feel a responsibility to look out for other Black Americans, with 39% who say they feel this responsibility extremely or very often, and 39% who feel it somewhat often. I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel this because if I see somebody that's Black and somebody maybe treating them some kind of way, I linger and I give them a look as I'm saying, "You good?" And if they're not, I'll linger. And if something starts to go sideways, well, I can step in. I've done that before. Because we feel responsibility because of what has been done to us for so long. So not only will we go into debt for each other, you know, faster or more likely, but also we will put ourselves at risk on behalf of others. And so when it comes to building community, a lot can be learned from how we operate, especially back then when we were more together. But the reason why we're not as together before is part of it isn't because, oh, we just want to separate ourselves. It's, you know, really a lot of the elements of this system. You got to think about the poisoning that has happened in the system with the onset of COINTELPRO and the CIA and pushing heroin and crack into our neighborhoods. You also have the issues regarding, you know, us trying to build political power, and then the people who were the leaders in our community, that they were murdered by the state with different collaborators and informants. And then on top of that, you had things like redlining and black codes, all these different things that played a part into keeping us separate. The mass incarceration that has happened that actually separated our families and taking, you know, the male figures especially out of the home in order for us to have more separated homes. And so all these different things have happened, right? And part of it also led to us being more economically disadvantaged than what we would have been if our families stayed together, if our communities stayed together. And so I want to go into this. It says within the Black population, Black adults under 50 are more likely than older Black adults to provide emotional support to their family. Yet younger Black adults are just as likely to receive emotional support from a family member. By gender, Black women, particularly those under age 50, are more likely than Black men to both give and receive emotional and financial support. So this just goes to show how, you know, not just in an economic, but also in a social aspect, how support is given. And so when I talk about trying to build community, I'm talking about things like this. Do you see your neighbors as potential family members? Do you see your neighbors as people who we can build with, right? Are we taking some of the prejudices that we may have, or are we throwing it away in order to have that community so that we can build power, a dual power together? And so really the reason why the Black community was considered so dangerous was because we had the secret sauce already. We had it. And that's one of the reasons why we were one of the biggest threats, because of what we went through, because of the strife that has been plagued on us by white supremacy, capitalism, and all these other different forms and systems, then we stuck closer together than other groups. But then because of that sticking together, it showed us as a cohesive block. And so when we actually wielded political power, it wasn't one finger, it was an entire fist. And so, but how do you get rid of the power of the fist? Well, you have to take it apart finger by finger until it's nothing there. And so this is exactly what has happened systematically. With COINTELPRO, with the redlining, with the mass incarceration, with, you know, trying to keep us under debt and all these awful things that have been done. And this isn't trying to be victims. This isn't a victim mentality. This is truth. This is honesty. And also, I'm gonna be real. If you want us to stop having this victim mentality, then stop having the perpetrator mentality. Stop victim blaming, and start going after the people who are in power that put us in this position in the first place. You know what I mean? Stop being the systemic version of, well, what were you wearing? And start being like, well, no, they're in power and they're causing this against these people. The onus isn't on the victim. The onus should be on the state for allowing these things to happen. The onus should be on the corporations that control the state and pushing these things to happen. Like, for instance, things like eminent domain. So we define family in much more broader terms than the rest, but it also shows how by that broad term, it could also build communities even faster and further than otherwise. And so when it comes to you trying to build dual power, do mutual aid, and try to build organizations, take a look at the Black community and how we have operated and try to emulate that so that we can actually build more political power. And then in turn, that builds power into creating a brand new system overall. I think we can learn a lot more from the Black community than otherwise, because of what we went through, we set the standard. And so I think we should take a look at that, at how Black Americans define family. And for us Black Americans, continue that and strengthen that. And those of us who are not Black Americans, adopt that if you haven't already, and then use that as your tool to build more power. All right, go ahead and like the stream. Thank you so very much to everybody. We're going to be going into the final segment soon. So thank you very much for that. What do you guys think about that? I thought that was a very interesting article. I like talking about things like that because it really just shows that, you know, we have a huge amount of influence. And I love that, you know, we have that. Let's see. Roger Mel said Eddie the dad from the OJs, JB, not Gerald the son. Oh wait, that was Eddie Levert? Wait, am I tripping? I thought that, why did I think that was Wait, hold on. So hang on. Yeah, so okay. So there was a remake of it. Okay. All right. So it was by Eddie Levert, who was part of the OJs, and then they did a redone. They redid it. That was done for the soundtrack for Medea's Family Reunion back in 2005. And it was collab with Shaka Khan, Yolanda Adams, and Carl Thomas. Okay. So, yeah, you're right, Roger. It was done by the OJs. Hang on. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, if you guys want to listen to it, I'll link it in the chat because I'm not going to play it because I can't. But yes, that is a great song. But why did I think? Yeah, because I thought it was Gerald Levert because Eddie Levert and Gerald Levert sound so similar because they're father and son. But yeah, and why is it every single fluffy black man you say I look like, Roger? Which one is it going to be? First of all, first you said, oh my God, you said I look like Umar Johnson. Then you said I look like Anthony Anderson, and now you're saying I look like Gerald Levert. What's going to be next? Like next, are you going to say I look like Reginald Vell Johnson, aka Carl Winslow? Dude, don't let me have a mustache. My gosh. Yes, Rondo says we were living that way before. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, like Auntie Margaret Kimberly. Yeah. Jacqueline says, JB, do you find that you have more in contact with people you call your cousins than you do your actual cousins? Right now, no. No. For me personally. But for other people, it could be very true. Right? It could be very, very true. Let me see. Interesting. Roger says, as someone who worked for tips, Southern freedmen, very generous with a cooperative mindset. Northern freedmen, cheap and capitalistic as hell. I got mine type of attitude. Who did we learn it from? Unfortunately. A non-user says communityism. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Edward says, JB, the capitalism is separating our community. It is that me concept mentality instead of the we concept. Blacks, Latinos, and other groups need to establish that we mentality again, like before. Absolutely. I completely agree. It says the one from BK said, I had so many aunties and cousins growing up. How many? Tell me how many. Niholo says, that's interesting you say that about, you guys are talking about. You guys are having other conversations in the chat. Let me see. Sean says, thank you very much for this super chat, Sean. He says Black residents in Roxbury are being kicked out, and Mayor Wu is MIA about it. Ooh, I bet you Savvy knows something about that right now. My goodness. Yeah. And then can we talk about how, oh my God, what's it called? The deed theft that's happening? Like, my grandmother was a victim of deed theft. The house that we were supposed to inherit as a family is gone. Gone. So, and my grandmother passed. So that house should have went to my mom. And if my mom had inherited that house, she'd be living in New Jersey right now with that house. You know, it's just because it's legal doesn't make it right. And our family home was stolen. That house was in the family for over 50 years. And then it got swiped from underneath her feet. And my grandmother died in her apartment. All the memories, all the heirlooms. Like, my grandmother was a seamstress. She had the old industrial sewing machines, the ones that are attached to tables. She had, I think, like 2 of them. Yeah. And then she had like old sewing machines. Like, she had so many. Oh my God, I missed that Garfield phone. But yeah, so many different things. Like, and it was a 4-story house. 4 stories. You had the bottom with the den, then you had the second level with the kitchen and the living room, and then you had the 3rd level with 3 bedrooms, and then you had the 4th level with the master. And then a huge backyard with a bomb shelter in the back. Yep. And now that house is out of the family. And they were the first ones to live in it. It was never lived in before. And there was nobody else in that area. It was a rural area. And they built around them. And now it's a pretty nice neighborhood. I wouldn't be surprised if the average home goes somewhere between $1.5 to $2 million. And it's predominantly white area. So my grandmother was literally like one of the only Black people, and they built around her. Yeah. That house is gone. Gone. God, I will never give over. I'll never get over that. I will never get over it. In South Jersey. In the nice suburbs. Damn. But yeah. Rondo says, no, you're just ignoring comments that are actually very much relevant to the conversation. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Is that for me? Okay. All right, so let's get into the next subject here. Of course, it's going to be an interesting one. Man. So, of course, we talked about the mosque shooting. And then we discussed defining family within the Black community. But we're going to be getting into the next one in regards to Briahna Joy Gray. So we're going to be getting into that. Let me make sure I have everything set up. because I feel like a lot of people are going after her, but it doesn't feel like, it feels like almost like just one big straw man, and saying, you know, what they're pointing at something that she hasn't actually said. And there's outrage from people who are either liberal or liberal adjacent. And so I just want to make sure that we cover this, because I think I understand what she's saying. And so I think that we should, you know, really just think we should really just take a look and really re-examine exactly what was said. So let me make sure I have everything correct here. Okay. And let me see. All right, so we're going to get into this right now. Disingenuous. Let's jump in. There's outrage over what Briahna Joy Gray has said in her interview on Bad Faith Podcast with journalist Sanaz Saeed. This recently sparking outrage. So we're going to listen to what she said and dissect the points to see if people are outraged in good faith or are they just being disingenuous. So let's take a look and get more context into the conversation. I feel like a lot of people really took this out of the context. So let's get into this, and then we will examine the context that was said before. But here's the part that people got outraged. So let's go.
Voters, and I'm like, you guys really aren't. You need to get outside the bubbles. You need to get outside the East Coast bubbles too.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know many, people on the left who would happily vote for Tucker Carlson before AOC. I'm frustrated by that dynamic because I don't want Tucker Carlson to be president. I also can't see myself damaging my own credibility by telling someone to vote for AOC. Like, these options hurt us all. And I wavered on this for.
So hang on. So she said that she knows many people on the left that would rather vote for Tucker Carlson than AOC, even though she wouldn't want that. But at the same time, she talks about not being for AOC either because it would affect her credibility. Well, did she say that she wants Tucker Carlson to be president, or that she would particularly vote for Tucker Carlson to be president? Because if we're going to look at it, who has been more strongly vocal about Israel and willing to call them out in response to what they've been doing over the last year or so? Who has been tiptoeing versus stomping the ground? You know what I mean? So a lot of people are outraged about it, even writing articles in response to what she said there. And so one of the things I think is important is I want to get into some things that people have been claiming, and then we're going to dissect to see if that's what she actually said, because this feels disingenuous, right? So here's Mike Brock says, Briahna Joy Gray is not on the level as far as I'm concerned. The fact that she's trying to convince people that AOC is too right-wing should be all you need to know about her. She serves chaos. She's not a good actor. But did she say that AOC is too right-wing? she's talking about a particular issue. And we'll get into that as we go back to cover the actual conversation between her and Sanaa Saeed. But the problem is that people are just cherry picking what was said in that very short clip. That 22-second piece, people are extrapolating that she said that AOC is far to the right. And for me, it's like, okay, but on what particular point? Because did she just say that just in general, or was she talking about a particular point? But if you actually watch the podcast and you watch her interview with Sanaa Saeed, you would be able to answer that question in the affirmative of whether or not she was saying that in general about AOC versus Tucker Carlson, or was she talking about it just in a specific narrow point? But the problem is that some people didn't bother to go in the video to watch the entire thing. And this is why context is so important, because a lot of people, y'all making me hot. Y'all just lazy. Y'all just lazy, and y'all just want to strike. Y'all just want to win points on her. That's basically what it is. Let's call it a thing. Let's continue on, because here's the crazy part, right? As we continue in this, let me share what Mehdi Hassan said. He said this from Zeteo News. He said, if you as a leftist think Marjorie Taylor Greene is better than AOC in any way, then I think you need help. This is what he said. Mehdi Hassan breaks down the double standard that holds AOC to endless scrutiny while overlooking MTG's years of extremism and conspiracy theory. So they also talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. But let's see what he says.
Some of her supporters, like Glenn Greenwald, say MTG has apologized for many of her prior views, which just isn't true. MTG has talked vaguely about a blanket apology, but has never actually apologized to Omar, or to Tlaib, or to Pelosi, or to Zohran Mamdani and Muslim Americans for posting this just last year, or to AOC herself. The sheer absurdity of people online saying AOC shouldn't have criticized MTG last week, and that MTG is now the victim here, ignoring the fact that in 2019, an unhinged MTG stalked AOC outside her office in Congress.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I'm an American citizen. I pay your salary through the taxes that you collect from me through the IRS because I'm a tax-paying citizen of the United States. If you want to be a big girl, you need to get rid of your diaper and come out and be able to talk to the American citizens.
In 2020, when first running for Congress, MTG posted a picture of herself holding a gun next to the faces of AOC, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib. In 2021, MTG helped incite an insurrection that could have gotten AOC killed. But hey, why isn't AOC being nicer to MTG? Here's the good news, though. Much of this deranged and dishonest anti-AOC vitriol is happening online. And sorry to break it to you, but Twitter isn't real life. This very same week that some very terminally online and very loud leftists were dumping on perhaps the most viable, charismatic, and pro-Palestinian left-wing potential presidential candidate of my lifetime, a new poll came out asking Democratic voters who they'd pick as their 2028 presidential nominee. And guess who was at the top of their list? AOC. But look, whether she runs or not, whether she wins or not, whether you like her or not, the most important point I hope you take away from this video is that if you think AOC, a proud socialist, someone who Trump and Vance and Fox and Rupert Murdoch are obsessed with taking down, if you think she is somehow less progressive, less moral, less worthy of your support than MTG, a woman who, yes, has finally come round to supporting Palestine over Israel, I'm glad she has, but continues to deny the 2020 election, to deny climate change, to demonize vaccines, to call for the arrest of Dr. Fauci, as she did again just this week, to demonize LGBTQ people, who has never apologized for her long track record of smearing Muslims, migrants, Palestinians, student protesters, socialist members of Congress, of supporting Elon Musk and Doge as they gutted foreign aid, including for the Palestinians just last year, who has consistently opposed allowing Palestinian refugees from coming into the US. If you as a leftist think she is better than AOC in any way, then I think you need help. Or at least you maybe just need to go touch grass.
But hang on. They didn't say all that, though. Like, hang on. How many of us said all that, though? If somebody is more correct on one issue, that's particularly a problem, right? And saying they're correct on said issue is a big problem. Shouldn't the onus be on the person who actually got it incorrect so that we correct them? Because here's my thing. How embarrassing is it for Marjorie Taylor Greene to be more correct on the issue regarding Palestine than AOC? That's embarrassing. That says more about AOC than it says about MTG or anybody who says, well, she's right on or correct on this one issue. Why are you pointing the finger at us when really you should be pointing the finger at AOC for not getting it right when she supposedly had been the correct person the entire time? Who was it that was sitting there in tears because she changed her no vote to funding the Iron Dome into present because she got some scolding from Mama Bear? Who was that? Who was the person that voted for defensive weapons to Israel? Wait a minute. Why in the world aren't you going after that person for not being correct on the issue? Because you would expect AOC to know better, and if she knows better, then why is she now more to the right than Marjorie Taylor Greene? That's sad. That is sad. And now people are coming after Briahna Joy Gray for saying things like, well, yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene is actually correct on this one issue. She's also, or you can say, oh, well, she's correct on going after the assailants that are in the Epstein files. Like, is MTG wrong? And they're like, oh my gosh, they're praising her. I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. When a politician gets something right, then, I mean, yeah, good. But you don't want us to say anything. But then, when somebody who is on the left gets something wrong, y'all don't want us to say anything. When AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, when at the time Jamal Bowman, I'm forgetting, she's head of the Progressive Caucus. I'm blanking on her name, but out of Washington, when they get something wrong, because we're supposed to hold politicians' feet to the fire, then it's like, oh, you guys can't say anything wrong. You guys are being too harsh on them. Because you guys want us to continue to praise them, but then when they do something wrong, you guys don't want us to hold their feet to the fire. But then when somebody who is a conservative that does wrong things all the time, we call them out. that one time, or maybe those 2 times, they actually did something correct, and we say, hey, you know what, they're right, then you guys get out and outraged. Now, do I think that when a politician does something right, should they get credit for where credit is due? I think so. It doesn't mean that we're completely aligning with them, but we're saying, actually, yeah, this is actually correct. I'll give you an example. Now, as far as property taxes, people like Ron DeSantis, the governor of my state, is saying, no, if you live in the state, you should only pay property taxes one time and that's it. You shouldn't have to pay property taxes, which a lot of people support. My thing is like, I'm fine with that as long as you find, as long as you don't put the burden of the taxes to pay for these social and infrastructure programs all on renters. You find a way to tax the rich to do that instead. But on the issue of property taxes for people who own homes, he's like, yeah, Floridians should not have to pay property taxes. But Ron DeSantis also said, but for the snowbirds that spend most of their time up north, oh no, you should pay property taxes. If you don't have your primary residence here, and if you don't live most of your life here in Florida, then yes, you should pay property taxes. I actually agree with Ron DeSantis on that. No, if you got more than one house, and if you don't have your primary residence here, then yes, you pay property taxes. Because guess what? You're taking a home away that should be going to a Floridian. So you pay taxes on that. But people will look at me like, oh my God, you're trying to align with Ron DeSantis? I said, no, he's correct on this one issue. It's called nuance. But the thing is that some people are, they have such a, they're into this binary thinking that it's either one side or the other. Look, baby, only Sith deals in absolutes. That's what I got to say. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I want to share also this as well. Matt Lee, who is, I think he's part of Majority Report. He said, no matter how many times you say, quote, I hate MTG and Tucker, end quote, if you follow it up with critique of a Democrat, I'll deem to be unfair. I'll be very disappointed in you for saying how much you love MTG and Tucker. Right? And the thing is like, that's true. Like, just saying that they're right about a particular issue doesn't mean that you're aligning with them. But the problem is that people, like, for instance, there are people who have, a lot of different issues, right? That are different than me. They have a lot of different opinions that are different from mine. And there's some disagreements. But if there's something that I feel like they're right on, okay, yeah, you're correct on that. You know what I mean? There's this team sports that we constantly try to engage in, when in reality it doesn't help anybody at all. And so I'm going to get into what Sanat Saeed said, and then Briahna Joy Gray actually responds. But I want to cover what was said prior to this to really get into context exactly what happened. So, see here, let me get into this. Make sure I get to my point. All right, we'll start there. All right, so let's get into this.
Down. So we're only getting this interview because it's so controlled. We're only getting this interview because this is the safest of safe spaces for Netanyahu to rear his head.
So just for context, she's actually speaking about the CBS interview that Benjamin Netanyahu gave to Major Garrett, and it was softer than a softball interview, because Sanaa Saeed basically said that it was really just a surrender to let Benjamin Netanyahu give his talking points. Benjamin Netanyahu wouldn't even answer Major Garrett's questions. He even said blatantly that he wouldn't answer some of his questions because, basically CBS is basically just the Zionist news network, ZNN. And so Major Garrett just, nodded and just allowed Benjamin Netanyahu to say whatever the hell he wanted and didn't challenge him on anything. And this is basically setting up what they were talking about. So let's continue.
Let's go a little bit deeper into this reality that there are people that are willing to call balls and strikes on Netanyahu far outside of the kind of traditional leftist anti-war media and political sphere. Let's go to this clip from Megyn Kelly, where she tees up one of the clips from Netanyahu and then criticizes CBS for editing the version that aired on cable news to exclude some of the more damning aspects of the interview.
That basically manipulated social media with bot farms, with fake addresses to break the American sympathy to Israel, to break the American-Israeli alliance because they think it's in their interests. And they do it in a clever way. It's like you hear a text message. I'm a red-blooded Texan. I always supported Israel, but I can't stand what they're doing. I'm turning against Israel. And then you trace the address to some basement in Pakistan, and that's something that has hurt us badly.
So that whole thing about bot farms did not air. Okay, the version that aired on TV included some of what we just played, but it was combined with a section from the very end of the interview, which focused on Israel's tactics to respond to the sentiment shift, not the shift itself. All right, they let him get away with it's all social media. It's not Israel's behavior. It has nothing to do with those tens of thousands dead in Gaza, or Gaza looking like a parking lot now, or the thirst, what appears to be a thirst for more war by Israel on this front and that front. It's not like, let's do it all. Who could forget when then the focus shifted to Hezbollah after Hamas, and then it was, we're going to get the Houthis, and then it was, they talked us into bombing the Iranian nuclear sites, and now we're back for more in Iran. And not to mention Syria, like they've been behind a lot. It's not that though. It's none of that. It's just social media. That's what's caused the shift. So they're not interested at CBS in talking about that, right? Because they included a little about how Israel's responding to the sentiment shift, like the evil podcasters or social media trolls who are causing it. And they don't want to discuss the actual shift itself and whether it has to do with Israel's behavior at all. Again, why is that? Why does CBS not want to discuss that? Could it be the Ellisons and their hand-placed handmaiden, Barry Weiss, who runs CBS now?
All right. Now look, everybody's listening to this. If you've been alive and on the internet for the past, few days, or even, weeks or months, there has been an ongoing conversation about what to make of the fact that these folks, the Candace Owens of the world, the Megyn Kellys, the Tucker Carlsons, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, have been sort of out front, given that they have much bigger platforms than those of us on the anti-war left, talking about and exposing the lies coming out of Netanyahu and the state of Israel broadly, and being willing to give a platform to criticisms of the state of Israel that is bigger than any, or most anyway, that can come out of the online left. What do you make of her response here, and how are you understanding both the sort of debate within the left about how much we should credit or amplify these kinds of critiques of Israel, and also the substance of her analysis here?
I mean, first of all, Megyn Kelly, and I hate to say it, but she's right in this instance, right? Is her analysis, I don't think it's like this incredible analysis of depth. I think it's actually just so obvious that, of course, they don't air this where, Netanyahu is completely dismissing real American grievances with his government, with his country, with his governance, and oversight, of course, and execution of the extermination of Palestinians, and just kind of making it all about, it's just social media bots. She's right in terms of that. This is something that's just kind of allowed to be said without also any kind of pushback. Now, in terms of someone like Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, or MTG, very famously these last few days, I think it's kind of like, to me, it's a bit of a hard balance to be honest, to completely strike. Megyn Kelly is interesting because she's more of a recent addition to this whole thing, and I think we can have a whole conversation to what extent are people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, and how actually like authentic they are in the perspectives that they bring. Megyn Kelly, I do think that she kind of saw where the right-wing wave in particular was going, and just jumped on it. So that's how I feel with regards to Megyn Kelly. With regards to the rest of them, I think, again, putting aside the question of how authentic or how earnest their perspectives are, like, do they really care about Palestinians? Do they really care and about Islamophobia all of a sudden after actually being part of the very same media establishment that has fomented it for decades and, talked about Iraqis and Afghans as monkeys, as, Tucker Carlson very famously called Iraqis monkeys. They've supported any and all kind of violent actions taken against these populations. And all of a sudden now, wait a second, this is bad. This is real. Why is this bad? Putting aside that massive conversation, I do think that what's interesting about this phenomenon is that it shows that there is a huge vacuum, not just a political vacuum, not just a information vacuum, but a moral vacuum that was created in this country when much of our even our, I guess you could say, most progressive, whether it's politicians or progressive outlets, really either held back or kept away from diagnosing all of this for what it is. And
there we have it. There we have it. They dropped the ball, and who picked it up? That's the point. That's the whole point of this. Some of these people are pissed off that a lot of these progressives dropped the ball, and it was primarily because of who was in office when this genocide started, and they didn't want to be too critical of him, and so therefore they softened their language. And now that the opposition is in office, now they want to be more fervent about it, but they should have been fervent about it when their own guy was in office, but they didn't. And now they're looking less authentic because the right-wingers that are now taking this on are literally stronger in their opposition to the guy that they supported versus what the Democrats, the progressives, were to the guy they supported. So that's part of the point, is that it's like, wait a minute, why wasn't, and thank you very much for correcting me, Pramila Jayapal, why wasn't Pramila Jayapal, AOC, I'm not going to mention Rashida Tlaib because Rashida Tlaib was more stronger. And Ilhan Omar was kind of But a lot of these progressives, they softened their tone when it came to Biden. And remember when AOC said that we're working tirelessly for a ceasefire? That was bullshit. She knew it. And so they went softer on Joe Biden. The progressives went softer on Joe Biden than the conservatives and MAGA went on Trump regarding this issue. And so unfortunately, now you're allowing people in MAGA to run to the left of the progressives on this particular issue. I said particular issue. And this is the same issue where you have someone like a Donald Trump that would run to the left of some people, some Democrats when he was running. He ran to their left. Now, was he actually to their left? No, he was right in line with them because both parties, operate within under the same influence, not just Zionist influence, but, billionaire and Epstein class influence. But the point is that the rhetoric coming from a Candace Owens, a Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Tucker Carlson, unfortunately, they're running to the left of these progressives in regards to this issue. They're stronger when they have their own guy in office. And they also approach this during this conversation. And so it's not that they're saying that they're better. It's basically saying that the progressives are not doing good enough. Because if these guys can run to your left, that means the progressives failed. They failed. But was it really actually a failure if you didn't mean to actually succeed? Anyway, let's continue.
Now, especially our news media created a huge information vacuum in all of this when they decided that they were just going to read Israeli IDF, press releases and call it reporting. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, when you have this huge, again, political information and moral vacuum created as people are watching with their own eyes the slaughter of an entire nation, this violent expansionism in the region, and more people being killed with American taxpayer funds, but also American permission and oversight, they are going to go where they see people just saying it like it is. There's no caveats. There's no I have to condemn this. They do, like Candace has done that, sure, and Tucker Carlson has done, the Hamas is terrible, so on and so forth. But they don't necessarily hinge on that. They just go through, they plow through the nonsense. And people want that. They don't want to hear caveats. They don't want to hear about, quote unquote, both sides, et cetera. And so people like Candace, people like Tucker, people are like MTG, right? MTG, I am not a fan of hers. And I think in general, we do have to be careful. I know it's yes, you have to build a coalition must be broad if you're trying to fight against genocide. And I have many Palestinian friends who have said, let this coalition be as broad as possible, because genocide, if we understand it to be the greatest crime, then we need everyone on board. And I completely understand that. And I am sympathetic to that. My personal concern with people like MTG, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, a little less Candace Owens, just because I feel like she's been on this for far longer than anyone else. She very, very early in the genocide said, hey, I am not down with watching dead babies. As a new mother, this is too much. She very, very quickly, switched. And of course, her entire fallout with Ben Shapiro. But my concern is that, sure, we want to build a broad coalition against genocide, sure. But who then gets to also dictate that narrative? Is it going to be the Tucker Carlsons, MTGs, and Candace Owens? Because when I look at Tucker Carlson, I look at MTG especially, but especially let's say Tucker Carlson, because I think he's really positioned himself in a way that stands out as well. Because we've seen his interview, for instance, with Mike Huckabee, where he really, again, Tucker Carlson is holding Mike Huckabee's feet to the fire on his perspectives on Israel. And our news media isn't. This is what I mean by information vacuum. But what worries me is that Carlson doesn't really engage with American policy and culpability and all of this. He is critical, yes, of American policy to an extent. But to him and to someone like MTG and I think a lot of other right-wingers who have jumped on this, they are saying a lot of the right things, morally right things, politically right things, but they're still framing this as though America is ultimately a good project that has now fallen victim to the Israelis, to Netanyahu, to, and they're also still invested in the protection of Israel. Tucker Carlson says this very explicitly, that like, I believe in Israel. I believe in it. And I think it's just gone, wayward, as opposed to, no, this actually is what Israel is. This is also what.
Okay, so yes, she's absolutely right. And those are valid criticisms. And I think that this still speaks to the ineffectiveness of progressives to really, how can I put this the right way? I don't know. Gatekeeping is kind of the wrong word, but they should be setting the standard of how strong they should be talking about liberation. And yet they falter every single time. And so leaving that lane open is a fault of theirs because they have fealty to Democratic leadership. And that fealty to Democratic leadership is what causes them to lose ground in that arena. It's just like defund the police, right? A lot of us were saying, no, abolish the police. Whoa, 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 whoa. Shh, 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 shh. We can't, no. We can't go that far. We can't go that far. They always hesitate. And then that leaves a lane open for another group to go, hey, abolish. And then they end up looking like the softies. And so they never, the fact that the progressives seem like they would be lighter on holding Zionism accountable than people like MTG, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens says a lot. And maybe I'm saying this ad nauseum, but to me, it's not about praising them. It's like, no, this should be a signal to progressives to switch up and go hard. It's like, go scorched earth. Now, where are we at? 78, 79 years after the Nakba? The escalation of the Nakba on October 7th of 2023, it'll be 3 years this October. It is way less political harm, self-harm, to go scorched earth against Zionism now than it was a couple of years ago. It's way easier. And yet they still don't go scorched earth. And they're saying, well, we gotta toe this line because, we gotta represent the people. And most of the people actually want you to go scorched earth because genocide is a red line. And yet they're able to go, these people who make slight concessions to Israel are willing to say more harsher words, able to go harder. By the way, Tucker Carlson is not in office. AOC and all these other progressives are. And so we can actually look at the votes they put out there. So even though Tucker Carlson has these words, the actions and voting is where the rubber really meets the road. You know what I mean? And so that's just part of it, what I I see as part of the fault of this. Anyway, let's continue.
American foreign policy, but also domestic policy has been for, I mean, we could spend hundreds of years, but also for decades as well, very explicitly in the Middle East. So for me, that's where the concern comes, is that I think we on the left, however defined, progressives really need to say, okay, here are people who are clearly grabbing the attention of people who are on our side, right? People who don't maybe agree with Tucker Carlson or MTG on issues of race, on immigration, and so on and so forth, but they are flocking to them. Why are they flocking to them? And what is it that we are not providing? And what it is that we're not providing is just a complete break with any kind of, a complete break also with the parties, to be completely honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Tucker Carlson and MTG are more critical of their parties
Mm-hmm.
than our progressive alternative left media, right? And of course, the last few days with AOC and that entire discourse online has shown that. And when people, everyday people see that, it's disheartening. It's disillusioning.
They seem more credible. And if they have more credibility, and they're frankly the only folks who are known to the public because they have these huge platforms who have credibility, then they're the ones that are going to get to dictate what the response to the genocide is and what the relationship with Israel is like going forward. And to your point, your very, very good point, the way that these folks are sort of laundering their past views is to say, both Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly have said this in recent interviews, that I said I had all these opinions about Muslims in the past, but I'm now realizing, was that propaganda from Israel? Like, did Israel make me say the Islamophobic thing? And so they're able to exonerate themselves of any culpability or real accountability for the things that they said in the past. And you can see how easily one could make a scapegoat of Israel in a narrow context, but continue to believe any number of bigoted things or imperialist things when simply moving over to a different context. Did you see that clip, by the way, watching? When you hear that click sound, it's toggling back between January 2026 Megyn Kelly and more contemporary May 2026 Megyn Kelly. Israel made me do it is the new excuse. It's not just used to sort of whitewash their own sort of trajectories on this, but also that of Donald Trump, right? It's a way for them to break away from what Donald Trump is doing in reality right now without necessarily alienating the MAGA base. His hands are tied is sort of the narrative. And frankly, I just want to say this, they're so smart. Because while the left is focusing so much on the bad faith of Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or whomever, those figures are smart enough to understand that even if you want to disagree with Donald Trump and the head of the movement, you can do so in ways that respect his base and give them a sort of golden gate of retreat. A phrase, by the way, that I first heard AOC using and adopted for my own use a very, very long time ago. But I think there's an intelligence to realizing that regardless of if you have a substantive and legitimate disagreement with these figures, the way you talk about them and the way you engage with them can be the difference between whether or not their audience sees you as credible and comes over to you and your way of resolving this newly realized antipathy toward Israel and Zionism, or whether or not they stay in their camp because they see them as most credible. And I think that's what's been difficult for me as I watch the back and forth on the internet. It's not that these words get bandied around like, are we going to ally with Marjorie Taylor Greene? Are we going to embrace Marjorie Taylor Greene? In some ways it's besides the point. To me, it's like, is Marjorie Taylor Greene saying the thing that I agree with? And to the extent that she is, I want her audience to listen to me because I have a solution to the problems she's identified that may be different than hers. And also I want to have the opportunity to point out to them some inconsistencies in her approach. If you're America first, but don't support Medicare for all, if you're America first, but don't support a wealth tax, etc., then I want you to be able to hear me and not ignore me because I've said something like Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Nazi and therefore nothing she says matters.
So I don't know if you guys remember This was back in, what was it, 2020? Yeah, it was the beginning of the pandemic. I think it was summer of 2020. Was it 2020 or summer of 2020 or 2021? 2021. No, it's 2020. And this was when Donald Trump was still in office. It was during the 2020 election. And Donald Trump says something to the effect of, well, because of this pandemic, and I'm paraphrasing, we should probably just give everybody Medicare. Now, everybody named Mama on the left went, he's right, yes, give everybody Medicare. Absolutely, yes, Mr. President. We did not care if he called it Trump care, if he called it MAGA care. You can slap whatever name you want on it, but just give us all Medicare. Okay, right? The point was that just because it came from him doesn't mean that the point was wrong. And then us being able to say, you know what, he's absolutely correct about that. But the way he goes about it is faulty, because if he actually wanted to focus really on working class issues, then he would focus on the issues within capitalism. Then that can get people to go, well, wait, you actually agree with him on this? And then, but he's wrong when it comes to the processes and how it gets done. It's like, and then we can go, well, how has capitalism worked for you so far? And the problem is like a lot of people, and I think this is one of the issues that we have to be careful with, is the binary thinking. Especially when it comes to, because do we have these opinions of some of these people that they are beyond the pale? Yeah. Yeah. At the same time, when we argue from the left, if they're correct on something, we'll be like, yeah, they're correct. And they're going about it the wrong way, but here's why. They're right on that particular issue, but for the reasons why they're right, it's not very congruent with really changing the system so that we can actually have something better. And here's why. Because the problem is that because so many people are so propagandized and they're so brainwashed that the moment they hear you say something terrible about a particular person, then they're going to shut off their ears and they're going to shut off their minds, and it's never going to permeate into their psyche, into their hearts. Because they're going to think, because it comes off as cultish. So I can call Tucker Carlson a fascist. I can call Marjorie Taylor Greene a fascist. And here's the thing. Honestly, like, are they in that arena? Well, unfortunately. But here's the problem. You also have to realize that a lot of Americans are brainwashed to go either one side or the other. And by one side or the other, I mean within the binary of the duopoly. Once you start to see every single person, when you get to the far left like I am, you start to see every person, because pretty much everybody's to the right of me. Everybody. AOC's to the right of me. Tucker Carlson's to the right of me. Hell, there's a lot of people in the Green Party there to the right of me. Hell, Jill Stein's to the right of me. You know what I mean? The thing is like, you start to realize, like, no, it's like everybody is, to one extent or another, what's the best way I can put it? They are influenced by the system in such a way where you have to see them as victims of the system, as victims of propaganda. And most people are not as politically astute as I am. Most people are not as politically astute as you are, who are watching this right now. Think about it. You're literally watching a political show in a midterm election year on your own. You're literally watching a political show, and you guys, half, maybe even more than half, probably 3/4 of the people who in this country don't even know that Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. They don't know who the hell Pete Hegseth is. If I asked you who the National Security Advisor was, they don't know. They barely even know who their lieutenant governor or even their mayor is. And so for people who hear the correct thing from somebody else's mouth, like a Tucker Carlson, they're going to be like, well, yeah, he's right on that issue. And this is something that they've been plagued with, right, for the last couple of years, ever since, seeing what Israel has done. And so to them, it's going to be like, well, I don't know that much about it because they probably didn't watch him that often. And they'd be like, well, he's correct on this issue. What else is he correct on? Because they see what Israel has done. And so I'm not saying that we should be sympathetic to these people who are the big voices on the right, but I'm saying that when they say something correct, it is really for their audiences to go, yeah, they are correct on this issue, but here's where they fall into the wrong realm. And, they're right on this particular area, but when it comes to the real nuts and bolts and how do we actually address this issue, they don't really have the map to be able to get to the destination that offers real liberation for all of us. And so I think this is one of the points that was being made. And people like Briahna Joy Gray were saying that, Tucker Carlson is better than AOC on everything, is that he's running to her left on this one particular issue, and that it is garnering so much attention because more people know who Tucker Carlson is, probably, and they know who AOC is. And you also got to remember that most people don't know even as much as you do who are watching this channel. People don't know as much as you. Most people don't even know. Most people, they know who Donald Trump is, but they don't even know who the hell JD Vance is. Because they're just not into politics like that. And so I think it's important that we focus on seeing the American people as a group of people who are constantly under propaganda from this country and say, hey, are you for a stronger family in America? Okay, so capitalism actually fights against that. Or if you say something to the effect of, are you for expanding protections of people who are LGBTQ? To me, that is more America first than anything else that they can think of. Like, why? Like, for instance, the family code law that was passed in Cuba, right? That would be a strength thing. If we did something like that here, that would be a huge strengthening thing to the country socially, which would lead to us strengthening the bonds in an economic way. Or talking about getting rid of the corruption would also be something that we should be doing. And unfortunately, some people on the right would not be willing to tackle that animal because they get money from that. But it's always never leaving them a way to gain an inch on you. But the problem is that there's some who consider themselves to be progressive, that they always are willing to allow the right or the far right or MAGA to gain an inch and take a mile on them in order to make themselves sound or seem more credible. And that's the sad part. And so I wanted to play more, but due to the sake of time, I don't have the opportunity. But one thing I do want to share is what Sanaa Saeed said. And here's what she had to say. She said, this was a great conversation with Briahna Joy Gray. This clip is part of a larger point of the moral and political incoherence and inconsistency currently feeding into Dem party discourse. And she links the video, right? I said, and before someone spirals into replies, I also in that episode say that MTG isn't an ally and address the right-wing term too. Absolutely. And she, and this person links the entire thing about, what Mehdi Hassan said. But Sanaa says, except it's totally disingenuous to what is actually being discussed. The replies to it call it out. So let's take a look at the replies. Whoop. So the replies says, and this is from Wyatt Reed. Shout out to Wyatt Reed. He says, remember when you helped manufacture consent for the genocide in Gaza? Mehdi Hassan said, Israel says 260 dead at music festival attacked by Hamas. I cannot imagine how horrific a massacre this must have been. And basically he talks about 260 people gunned down. Rafah al-Arir, who was murdered, says Mehdi Hassan wants as many Palestinians dead as possible to prove his fake morality. He is as dangerous as Israelis bombing us in Gaza. Rathbone said, condescending and telling your audience that they're stupid for commending those who took principled stances on genocide. Great strategy, sheepdog. Justin Phillip, I just had him on a few weeks ago, says, I don't care about MTG, but AOC endorses genocide heirs. So that's another point, right? How are we going to go after people who say that MTG and Tucker Carlson are right on the issues, yet you got people like AOC who are literally taking photos and endorsing people who greenlit the genocide? It doesn't make sense. It's incongruent. It's perpendicular to the points that they're trying to make. And yet, we get finger wagged at saying, oh, well, this person is correct on this issue. No, AOC, you need to get right on this issue because you're embarrassing yourself by being to the right of MTG, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. You're gonna let them run to your left? Girl, that's wired. That's weird. Roswell says you're a partisan hack attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene that takes a principled stand on genocide while ignoring AOC's record of supporting funding for genocide. AOC can't even call them Palestinians. Using the Israeli Gazans, there is no left, right, and genocide. Question Everything says it's not very deep here. Some more receipts for you and your establishment. Sheep herders, a thread. And then Who Wants to Bury a Billionaire says, can you point to how AOC support of genocide is good without any mention of MTG? If not, then MTG just a distraction from your weakness of your basic premise. King of Janny says, everything MTG does is rooted in actual anti-Jewish sentiment. Everything AOC does is rooted in what Mama Bear would guide her in for investments. We can argue until our gills are bruised, but which is worse? I won't be trusting either of them for anything. And that's fair, right? That's a completely fair argument. Rotating Villain says, this is a straw man. Nobody's saying MTG is progressive. She is undoubtedly more courageous on the Palestinian issue than AOC has ever been. And the thing is, like, people are missing and thinking that people are talking about every issue. No, they're just saying about this one particular issue. And this could fall apart in a couple of years when the next person runs for office and they go, well, I didn't say all that. You know what I mean? The point is like some of these people who are in office or who are, in notoriety right now, like they're saying the right thing because it's popular right now, right? And look, let's not forget, because y'all think I forgot about the anti-blackness that people like Tucker Carlson put out for years while he was on Fox News? Oh, hell no. By the way, the anti-blackness that was stated by people like Ann Coulter, and then when Ann Coulter talked about Black Americans versus Black immigrants, a lot of Black Americans jumped on her side. But was she correct on one issue? Technically, yes. But it doesn't mean that Black Americans were completely close in line with Ann Coulter. No. It was like, yeah, she's right on one issue. And so I think the thing is, it's like saying one person is right on one issue doesn't necessarily mean we co-sign everything that they agree on. And also, why are people looking for us to be in an echo chamber? Should we be trying to move people to our side instead of just staying amongst ourselves? What's the point of growing the left if you're not willing to reach out? And I'm not talking about reaching out to some of these hardliners that will never, ever, ever move at all, or even to their popular voices. I'm talking about to the people who actually just listen to them. And not even listen to them as stans or fans, but really just listen to them in passing. You know what I mean? But at the same time, that does not mean that you forego your principles or beliefs in order to show them that you understand them. You do not have to imitate the bigotry or prejudice of people in order to show them that you understand where they're coming from. And I think that's a problem that some on the left also have too. You know what I mean? I think it is giving some grace to people who have been brainwashed by the agents of this system and go, hey, they're right about this one issue, yes, or those two issues, yes. But also, let me help you expand because there's a lot of areas where they miss. And so, do I think that a lot of the attacks against Briahna Joy Gray are disingenuous? Yes. Because if they have watched the entire whole hour that they were talking about this particular issue, rather than the 22 seconds, then they would know that that's not what she's saying. And so this is one big straw man that every person, who is, coming out against Briahna Joy Gray, they're running with. And I think that is dangerous because then it makes the left inaccessible to people who may not be there. See, the point is to meet people where they're at. And the thing is like, you don't necessarily want to be where they're at, but you want to meet them there and then take them along with you as you go towards a more liberatory and people-centered arena. And it gives them the understanding that, hey, yeah, this person was correct on this one issue, but that opened the door for me to be able to look into others who are more progressive and go, you know what, they were right on that one issue, and that was the crack in the hole, and that helped me to understand that, yeah, they were right on that, but they were still wrong. You know what I mean? My crack in the hole was Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying that he's good. I'm saying because Bernie Sanders is way to the right of me. But that was a crack in the hole that actually opened the door for me to move further left. That was the crack in the hole. Some people's crack in the hole may be further to the right, and then they open that door. And so then in a couple of years' time, they may look at, oh my God, I can't believe I used to listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene. oh my God, I can't believe I used to listen to Tucker Carlson. Because that crack in the hole was made. Because they actually end up being right on this one issue where we were like, yeah, they're correct, but here's what they falter. But yeah, let's see what Briahna Joy Gray said, and we'll finish up. Because I think she was actually correct on this issue. Briahna Joy Gray says, the only correction I'd make is that no one is dunking on me. I'm right. I said in my troll's favorite tweet from 2017 that a right-wing Supreme Court of the United States was not a sufficient threat to get people to vote for someone as loathsome as Hillary. Tucker's white nationalism won't stop voters from choosing him as their anti-war candidate if Dems put up an obvious phony. And the problem is they keep putting up phony. Here is Steve Grumbine. He puts up this meme, says cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experiencing by a person who pretends we can vote our way out while fully knowing we live in an oligarchy. And he says if we all vote, we can change things versus we live in an oligarchy, power is not ours. So that's the problem. And the problem is that a lot of people are saying that, yeah, Tucker Carlson is not anti-war. No, but he's correct on one issue. And not everybody is as, adept into knowing everything about Tucker Carlson as we are. Not everybody's a politics nerd. So we have to give people the grace and say, hey, yeah, he's right on that one issue, but here's let me help you expand your understanding that he won't tell you. Because he's still part of that league of people that will keep you within the system. Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments. All right, everybody, go ahead and give a like to the stream. I am way over time, but I had to get that out because I really do think that the attacks against Bree are disingenuous, especially from some of these people who know better. Mehdi Hassan's not an idiot. He's a very intelligent man, which makes it even worse. So yeah, that's, AOC is a very intelligent woman. And to me, it makes it worse, right? That's what I think about some of these people. There's no stupid people in this thing. There may be people who are mistaken. There are people who are propagandized, but no, there's nobody who's an idiot in all this. And if and also, if you guys disagree with me, please feel free. This is not an echo chamber. You guys have your opinions and your lived experiences, and I want to respect that as well. So let's go into the comments here. I started some comments early, so let's go here. A non-user says, JB, I just refuse to elevate a fascist so that I can agree with MTG on an issue and still refuse to promote her. That's fair. The thing is, it's like when they say something correct, I use it as a way to shame progressives into going, wait, she's correct on this issue. Why aren't you? That's how I use it. You know what I mean? It's like, you're going to let that person run to your left? Are you for real? You see what I mean? Edward says, Ro Khanna is also taking flack from both other Republicans and Democrats for wanting to release the Epstein files. His support for the Palestinians and Chinese manufacturing bring their plants to USA. Here's the thing, right? How many people are coming after MTG for assisting, or not assisting, but co-sponsoring a bill with Ro Khanna in order to release the rest of the Epstein files? How many people are going after her for that? You know what I mean? She's correct on that issue. So therefore, why, you know what I mean? Why isn't Briahna getting this much flack? And I'm gonna be honest with you, part of me is looking at, you know, Briahna Joy Gray is a black woman. You know, I know some people are gonna roll their eyes, but I'll just call a thing a thing. I'm just being observant. You know, I'm a black man in America. We gotta call these things out. Roger says AOC looks like the victim of bullies in high school, and MTG probably brought back that trauma. I can't blame AOC for not really wanting to mess with her, but she should have not let MTG get to her left. And that's the point. She left that lane open. Mary Ploppin says AOC just says whatever she thinks people want to hear, but never votes meaningfully. She left that open. Yeah. Kimiko says Pramila. Yes, thank you very much for correcting me. Pramila Jayapal, that's the name I was thinking of. For some reason, her name escaped me. Lewis says, let's be honest, all polls in 2016 said Hillary Clinton would win, and she had the popular vote. When Marjorie Taylor Greene called it a genocide and all the Democrats used softer words, it's more valuable than other things. Unfortunately, they did. Bernie Sanders took the longest time. He wouldn't even call it a genocide. Bernie Sanders wouldn't even call it that. You know, so the fact that MTG was willing to use more stronger language, that means something. Bryce said, I'm thinking they're adopting the language of the left to move the working class to fascism. It is how I see it when MTG speaks. It's speculation coming from me, though. And that's also a valid point. And this is why channels like this exist, in order to say, hey, yes, they are correct on this issue, but this is where they get it wrong. And also, many of you who are watching, you guys are more politically astute. You guys are more, have more political prowess than the average person. And so you can also explain this as well and be like, hey, yeah, they are not to be trusted. I don't trust Tucker Carlson. I don't trust Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't trust Megyn Kelly. I don't trust Candace Owens. But my thing is like when they say something correct, it's like, yeah, they're correct, but, and then you add in what they're missing. Because how many people like these four that I just mentioned are going to connect it all to capitalism and imperialism? How many of them are going to? And how many of them are going to connect it to capitalism and imperialism without using all the jargon to confuse people to make them think, oh, well, this person's just speaking a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo from college? No. The thing is, like, we also have to be educators and educating the masses so that, look, you got to educate people so that they can tell a counterfeit dollar bill from a real dollar bill. You know what I mean? In order to learn what a real dollar bill is, you see a counterfeit, you'll know what is a counterfeit. But you got to teach them what a real dollar bill is. Unfortunately, you know, and I blame some of left independent media because they're very, how can I put it? They don't want to expand the left. They just want an echo chamber. And they don't want to grow their audience. And by growing their audience, I don't mean sounding like the right. I don't mean making the right feel comfortable in their bigotry. Not at all. What I mean is you go to them and go, hey, you're frustrated with work. You're frustrated with your ability to afford things. You're frustrated with how politicians are in the system. You're not crazy. And here's why. But it is not because of these particular people that are to blame that have no power. Here's who to blame. And you're going in the right direction. But let me share with you why this particular lane is going to take you out of the way versus this lane is going to take you towards liberation. It's more work. That's the problem. And by some, I mean some who consider themselves to be part of the left, especially the legacy left media, they don't want to do the work. That's the problem. Kamiko says they open the lane for these right-wingers because the progressives are so weak. Yeah, unfortunately. Chris says MCG and Carlson don't have the right-wing, quote-unquote, commie devil pressure or the fake left-wing conformity pressure so they can say what AOC has been cowered into not saying. Yeah. And yes, Roger, he says, now you know why I say abolish all political parties, and you got a boy there. Sela says, I don't support imperialism, fascisms, or xenophobia methods of governance. Using their language to define them is a good way to not support their dehumanizing control and abuse of power. Yeah. Anon user says, if Bree thinks she's going to steal any MTG fans away, I have a bridge to sell her. And the thing is, like, it's not about stealing fans. It's about people who may hear what she has to say and go, oh, wait, she's right. What else is she right on? It's you know, it's people who may casually listen to her, not the people who are stans or fans. You know, but I get what you're saying, you know, and you have a point there. Sally says, JB, let them know, family, we have no permanent enemies or permanent allies, only permanent interests. We are here for policy, not politics. Good, brother. B1. Good to see you, Sally. Did I say your name correctly? If I didn't, I'm sorry. Yeah, Bryce says he said correct things that all his Bree is saying. It doesn't mean people are going to switch parties. Most are sticking with them if they are loyal dogs to them. Yeah, you know, unfortunately, some people are just more, what's the way I can put it? Some people are fans, right? It's a cult of personality, you know? And unfortunately, the cult of personality is strong. And I think also AOC is part of that cult of personality. Some people, she can do no wrong. And they'll be like, oh, we critique her. Yeah, right. Yeah, you critique her. But the moment somebody says something wrong about her, then you want to defend her. It's the same thing. And it's the same thing about people like Trump or something like that. Chris says, I think Ann Coulter was pulling a trick on black people on that 14th Amendment to pull black folks to the right, pitting them against immigrants. What will be the implications when the 14th is gone? And you could be right on that. The thing is like, you know, a lot of times where some demagogues, there'll be a grain or a nugget of truth in what they say, and it's surrounded by something that's either hyperbolic or false. Roger Meadows says, no one spewed more anti-blackness on the right than Candace Owens. It's more anti-FBA. And the thing is, like, look, I got my issues with Candace Owens too, right? Here's the problem. Candace Owens also, I don't align with because she's anti-black as hell, and in many ways. So that's one of my biggest points. Cowboy Kitty says, yeah, FMTG, but I will use her for propaganda. Edward says, JB, you're right. I believe that Tucker Carlson, Thomas Massey are right on their anti-war stance, but disagree with them on a lot of issues because I'm a socialist. Yeah. Let's see here. Heather Wimberly says, a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. And they continue, says, this is a spiritual battle. We need to fight it as such. Mm. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it for making sure. I wanted to make sure I'm correct. You got to come correct, right? All right, everybody. It's time for me to head on out because, well, JB got to make dinner. But stay tuned for next week. I think I will be having a guest on to talk about the issues surrounding Ecuador, as well as what's going on in Bolivia. There's a huge amount of issues going on with Bolivia this week. That is something that we need to discuss as well, because that's going to have implications on us here in the United States. And so I think I have a guest a journalist to come on to talk about that. So be sure to tune in next week at the usual time on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, people who are waiting for me to get back on track with the readings, I will be trying to get back on track with the readings. Hopefully I'll be able to do it on my next day off, so stay tuned for that. And what else? Yeah, so we're gonna head on out. Thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. And like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them, right? Smoking if you got them, drinking if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch it be funny, because joy is revolutionary. Read because reading is fundamental. And look, I love you all for just being who you are. Continue to protect those around you, because we never know what may happen tomorrow. Tomorrow is never promised. Keep people close, and also always try to keep an eye on and look out for people who are the most marginalized among you. Be that safe place for others, because look, this world is very unkind, and you never know what people are going through. And this is how we are neighbors with each other. We have to grow that feeling of neighborhood and connection with each other, because I'll be honest with you, we're going to need it now more than ever. So guys, have a good one. Have a good night. Mwah. Forehead kisses. I'll see you guys next time. Peace and love. And hair grease. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you'd like to see any more, you can look here. Mwah. Forehead kisses.